In the stone jungle, as always, the sun was not visible, which was obscured from people by skyscrapers. In one of these buildings, a medium-sized office was holding a job interview. The local workers didn't know who the woman sitting behind the desk was, but one of them suddenly recognized her. It was Xiao Hei's girlfriend. It seems today she came here to dump her boyfriend. Did she decide to break up with him right in the office? Wild woman? The local beauty whispered in exasperation. Meanwhile, a very unpleasant conversation was going on behind the glass. I'll keep it short. I can't live with a miserable man like you anymore. The hero looked confused. He wanted an explanation for such cruel words of his girlfriend. The latter shouted that his pathetic appearance disgusted her. This phrase literally shocked the guy. To hear such a thing from the object of one's crush is really very painful. Then I decided to give you a chance because I saw the potential of your cultivation. Even though you didn't enter the cultivation university, at least you were the last descendant of the fading spellcaster clan. But do the math. How many months have we been together? And your pathetic bloodline is still sleeping the dead sleep. The beauty angrily blurted out. She felt that the young man had wasted 3 months of her youth. She had let so many immortal descendants pass through him. Xiaofei bewilderedly muttered, even if I spent all my savings on spiritual stones for you, all sorts of spiritual energy jewels. The enraged beauty slapped her hand on the table. How dare he even stutter about that? That trash you gave me. The spiritual energy in it was so weak that it was barely perceptible. Look at the earrings young Master Bai gave me. They are simply overflowing with spiritual energy that can ward off evil, protect the body, and even enhance beauty. Suddenly, a noise was heard behind the glass of the office. Someone squeezed the computer mouse so hard that it shattered into splinters. Xiao's now ex-girlfriend was also distracted from her angry tirade. The office worker who was watching this scene could no longer sit still. The girl exclaimed, "You have overstepped any boundaries." Her friend tried to calm her down, asking her to stay out of other people's business. They have enough official duties. Suddenly, a voice was heard. "Don't get me wrong, I meant—" The girl looked angrily at her already ex-boyfriend. He asked her to return everything he had ever given her. This request threw the beauty completely off balance. She was literally trembling with anger. "Hey Xin, I curse you to be a loser all your life and die a horrible death," the girl exclaimed. The young man in turn was completely unfazed. "If it's inconvenient to bring, you can mail everything to me." But his ex already ran out the door, shouting one last time, "Think about it. I'd rather throw it all away than return it to you." The hero shouted back that he wished he knew the location, because it would be a pity if everything just went to waste. The girl, who continued to closely follow the events, told her friend that this guy is quite interesting, but the latter advised her to attend to her work duties, otherwise the manager might appear out of nowhere. Just as she said those words, her friend saw a shadow in front of her that blocked her light. It was the manager of the cultivation department, Zhang Jiqian. He asked the girl if she had fulfilled this month's KPI. Suddenly, the manager's attention was caught by Xiaofei. He shouted, "Am I paying you to come here to sleep?" He was just dumped by his girlfriend. He's a bit upset right now. He'll come to his senses soon. His co-worker stood up for the guy. Zhang didn't reply anything, only glanced in the direction of the pretty girl. A little later, during a break, Xiaofeng, hoping to be alone, climbed out onto the roof of the office building. Suddenly, the hero was taken aback when he heard, "Didn't you eat on your lunch break?" Approaching the young man was manager Zhang himself. The man was smiling amiably, holding a bag of lunch in his hand. Jiqian offered Xiao a drink to relax. In the young man's mind, the manager usually looks at me with a look that can sizzle. Why is he suddenly so kind today? A little while later, when the can of Coca-Cola was finished, it flew to the floor. The hero jumped to his feet. He clearly needed to vent. "She ate my food and drank my drinks. Spent all my money and cheated on me all the time. Let her die." After this emotional tirade, Xiaofei immediately felt better. He didn't expect that the usually so cold manager actually cared so much about his subordinates. Suddenly, the hero felt dizzy and everything in front of his eyes swam. The young man began to lose his balance. At the last moment, he realized there was something in the Coca-Cola. A devilish smile appeared on Zhang Jiqian's face, his eyes burning with red fire. In the next moment, Xiao fell at the manager's feet. The latter was satisfied with his work. When consciousness later returned to the hero, he saw that he was standing shackled on the edge of a cliff. The young man heard footsteps behind his back. A familiar voice said, "At last you have come to your senses." Fei looked back and saw the manager. He was approaching confidently, putting his hands in his pockets. The hero said that it was some kind of misunderstanding, but Zhang replied that there was no mistake. Xiao was the one he was looking for. Fei gritted through his teeth. I'm not into entertainment like S&M, and I'm not interested in men. Such mockery on the boy's part infuriated the manager. He could not hold back his own emotions and hit the helpless hero in the face with his fist. Do you think this is funny? Don't you realize the situation you're in? Look down carefully, Zhang Zhijin exclaimed, grabbing the guy by the hair. Xiao lowered his gaze into the abyss and saw red eyes that were rapidly approaching. That gaze was blazing with fire. There was something mystical about it. Another moment, and the hero saw the owner of the falling eyes. It was a giant dragon, the manager exclaimed, addressing the serpent. Divine Dragon Lord, we have made a sacrifice. Although this lowlife hasn't awakened, he still has the spiritual root of the ancient race in his body. It will surely be much tastier than the sheep and pigs we brought before. The dragon held out some kind of pill to Zhang and said in a scary voice, This is the true condensation pill I promised you. The manager was pleased with the size of this pill. He was sure that he would definitely make a major breakthrough this time. The man returned and left, wanting to start cultivating as soon as possible. The dragon asked if his victim had any last words before he died. Xiaofei didn't look scared. He narrowed his eyes and looked directly at the beast. The young man boldly said, Your mouth stinks. Perhaps you should brush your teeth before dinner. The dragon responded angrily, calling the hero an insolent man. He called himself the Lord of the Clouds, the ruler of the 9 heavens, the bearer of thunder and rain, who rides the 4 seas. For 3,000 years he silently cultivated the abysses. 80,000 years wandering the 9 heavens. The next moment, he fell silent and thought about his tirade. He realized that he had lost his temper. How could he get angry over a mere mortal? The next moment, the hero's shackles shattered into splinters, and he was pulled upwards into the dragon's jaws with the help of magic. Normally I swallow people in one fell swoop, but today I will give you the special honor of tearing you to pieces and savoring you slowly, starting at the feet. The ancient serpent spoke with a smile. Xiao shouted that it couldn't be done, but the dragon thought it was too late to beg for the position. The guy said he had a fungus on his feet, and it would make the dragon's mouth stink even more. When he is in the snake's mouth, he will inhale the smell of his stinky feet and the dragon's fresh breath at the same time. That smell would be like waking up in the morning, not brushing your teeth and eating your ex's stinky socks. The dragon couldn't listen to any more of this chatter. He shouted, ordering the young man to shut up. The beast clenched its sharp teeth on Fei's legs. Blood flew in different directions. The hero was in unbearable pain, barely restraining himself from screaming. The guy's fingers curled in pain, but suddenly some symbol appeared on the outside of his palm. The forbidden bloodline technique was activated at the moment of danger. The light of life and death put a death mark on the enemy that kills the owner of the technique. The mark of life he puts on himself. From then on, the enemy will suffer the same pain and take the same damage as you until you die from this curse. Once the double angulation is used, the bodies under the curse of life and death will die together. Without the intervention of a top-level immortal magic, neither party will have a chance to be revived. This spell cannot be blocked or broken from the outside. Suddenly, the young man heard, "Student He Xin, what kind of nonsense are you talking about?" The hero realized that he was in the classroom. All of his classmates and the professor were keeping their perplexed gazes on him. "I told you to read the 7 arts of body tempering. What does life and curse have to do with it? Did you take too much body-hardening medicine and start raving?" the teacher angrily asked. The hero was silent. He could hear his classmates laughing at him. Meanwhile, there was a conversation somewhere in the teacher's lounge. "Professor Yin, I heard that a new kid transferred to your class?" The man confirmed it. The woman continued, "To get into your advanced class, his talent must be impressive. Otherwise, with your requirements for applicants, you wouldn't even look at an ordinary person." Teacher Yin opened his desk drawer and looked in there with a smile. He then said to his colleague, "This guy has other talents." The professor thought to himself that in any case, he wouldn't even last until the first monthly exam. The man thought it would be foolish not to take advantage of such a bonus. There were stacks of money in his desk drawer. Meanwhile, in the auditorium, one of the students exclaimed, "Professor, with such a talent, he's completely useless even if he eats himself to death with pills." At this moment, Xiaofei was thinking, "What talent do I need to cultivate?" He was tired of listening to this bullying. After that dragon killed him, the hero came to his senses in his own bed. The spiritual root that had been sleeping for 20 years suddenly woke up. The young man remembered his ex's words. You may not have gotten into a decent cultivation university, but at least you're the last descendant of the fading spellcaster clan. Xiao caught himself thinking. Why was he constantly thinking about that woman's words? It wasn't like he had ponied up 50,000 to the class principal to transfer right now, just because he harbored resentment at her words. The hero was so immersed in his own thoughts that he flinched when he saw someone's foot on his desk. Newcomer, let me familiarize you with the rules of this class. Every week, you owe me at least 1 bottle of body hardening pill, 1 bottle of Pei Yuan pill, and 1 dose of Gubin potion. Everything must be of the best quality, said the local brigand. The other children noticed that their classmate, named Zhang Jibai, was once again educating a newcomer. It would be an interesting performance. Why is it that I'm the one who has to give all this to you? And why are you standing on my desk? Xiaofei wasn't scared at all. Nahal believed that this was his territory, so he could stand wherever he wanted. He angrily added that he usually jumped from the window while the weaklings used the ladder. Taking a step onto the windowsill, Zhang added, "If you don't bring the goods by the end of class this Friday, I'll tie you to a lamppost in front of the school. Let the other students have some fun." The brigand took a step forward into the void. Xiao kept his gaze on the brazen man's foot that was still on the windowsill. Suddenly, the hero's eyes turned red like that dragon from his past life. Without hesitating for long, the young man struck that leg with the edge of his palm. Zhang Jibai lost his balance and tumbled out of the window, screaming throughout the courtyard. The young man landed unsuccessfully, his head hitting the ground. The other students who saw the landing were amazed. He just flew face first into the ground. Zhang must be practicing the old steel-tempered technique. He wouldn't die from such a fall. The children did not really sing the guy. One of them said, "If he died, I'd go up 1 step in the class ranking." The young man really wasn't very hurt. After a moment, he rose to his feet and shouted, addressing Xiao, "What the hell? Don't go out after class, I'll break your legs." One of the green-haired classmates looked back to the newcomer and warned him, "You're screwed. This Zhang Jibai is a famous class thug. No one has ever defeated him before. His family is a powerful and influential academic cultivator clan in this place, and his body-hardening technique has reached an incredible level. The last disciple who got in his way, the rascal had brought his entire family to the point of ruin or death." The young man added in a friendly manner that it was best to avoid Guji Alley after lessons in the newcomer, which was just on the path on the way home. It was usually where Zhang's gang would ambush him. After class, when the hero was on his way home, he saw a familiar alleyway. Meanwhile, the villain's comrades were already there. One of them asked the boss, "Do the 3 of us have to deal with some new guy?" Another answered for the chairman, "What do you know?" This trash is no different from an ordinary person. The boss could crush it with 1 hand, but it would be too humiliating for him. We have to deal with it. Chang thought that this little scumbag was probably trembling with fear and thinking of ways to get around this alley. But it didn't matter, because the boss had people everywhere. He can't escape. One of the henchmen supported the boss in every possible way. He thought the boss had thought of everything. Suddenly, everyone present heard a voice. "Who said I'm going to hide?" Xiaofei boldly walked down the dark alleyway straight into the hands of danger. The scum didn't expect the hero himself to come straight into their trap. One of them said, "You realize that you won't escape anyway, so you decided to meekly accept death, didn't you?" Zhang Jibai's mind flashed. This young man doesn't look scared at all. What is he up to? Perhaps he's one of those rare types that hide their true strength and pretend to be weak to strike a sudden blow. Xiaofei's eyes burned red. He spoke in a calm tone. "What a bunch of weaklings you are. Are you really afraid to clamp down on someone at the school gate? Instead, you chose some alleyway so far away to ambush someone here. I worked so hard to get here. Come on, hit me." One of the rascals could not stand this provocation and rushed at the young man with his fists. Jumping up, the scoundrel kicked the hero in the stomach. Xiao flew back. The blow was so strong that he smashed his own back on the asphalt. The bandits scoffed. They had expected something more from such an arrogant rookie. Zhang Jibai thought that he had managed to navigate all sorts of things for nothing. This is really an ordinary guy. That was a 5th-level body-hardening strike. Your internal organs must have turned to mush. You won't live long, said the one who attacked first. Lying in a pool of blood, Xiaofei muttered, "I'm not hurt at all. This is what you call 5th-level body hardening? Weak and soft like some loser." This guy's words almost drove the bandit crazy. his eyes filled with blood. He exclaimed in rage, "Can't wait till you stop breathing!" He jumped up, intending to finish the insolent man right away. Suddenly, the bastard's foot disappeared, leaving a trail of blood. Red spatters flew in different directions, splattering the rest of the gang. The young man cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Xiao continued to lie on the ground. He said, "Now you are truly legless." Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, a blonde woman appeared in the middle of a dark alley. Looking at the hero, she said that she had finally found him. Zhang Jibai and his henchmen were dumbfounded by the appearance of the stranger. The gang leader looked confused. In a moment, that woman seemed to materialize out of thin air. The boss's henchman raised his magic sword to strike, intending to attack the stranger from the back. Zhang Jibai saw everything. He shouted, "Hey! Don't use the deadly technique here. You might destroy everything around you." The next moment, there was an explosion. Possible casualties from the purple golden stick. This idiot destroyed all the surrounding houses. The boss thought about the fact that when the time came, the old man would give him a whipping for the consequences. When the smoke cleared, Zhang saw two shadows, a member of his gang with a sword in his hands and a strange girl. The bandit's sword stopped near the stranger's head. Jibai was stunned by what he saw, his mouth open, sweat dripping down his face. Now it was clear why the young man froze. The woman stopped his weapon with a single glance. It's worth running back a bit to tell you who this supergirl was. Somewhere on a flying island, under a large tree, two people were sitting at a table. A girl we already know and a crane. They were playing a board game with white and black chips. The crane was playing with black. He asked his rival, "Lady Divine Dragon, why do you always appear in human form? Who needs those stupid immortal palace rules that require one to appear in their real guise anyway? Then it turns out to be like yours. A human body with a bird's head on it," the girl replied. Crane didn't have anything to say to these words. Mistress Dragon noticed the strange behavior of her comrade and wondered if he was offended, but he pointed his finger at her and explained that the woman was bleeding. The beauty did not believe it. She thought he was joking, because the last time she bled 100 years ago. Her invincible body has heavenly protection. But the very next moment, the dragon lady herself was convinced of the truth of the crane's words. Blood was gushing from her neck. The girl promptly used the blood-stopping technique. In the next instant, she flew into the air, apologizing to Brother Crane. The half-human, half-bird shouted after her, "If you go to the lower world, don't forget to report to the Immortal Palace." Meanwhile, the dragon mistress in human form was rapidly approaching Earth. She scanned the symbol that appeared on her hand with divine consciousness. It is a deadly curse, and even her powers are not enough to break it. The curse of life is on someone in the human world. Dragon Mistress must find the scum who placed the death curse on her. Flying to Earth in a matter of minutes, the beauty immediately sensed where she needed to go. The alley was in a sector of defense with magical symbols. The other side of reality could not be seen by everyone. The Dragon Lady had protected all the surrounding houses from the destruction they could experience from the sword of a single goon. At the epicenter of events, two of the participants were lying on the ground, while the third was frozen in place with a sword in his hands. Zhang Chibai's mind flashed. Withstood a master's death blow at the true condensation level and didn't even move. At the moment of impact, she still created a protective barrier, so all the buildings around her remained unharmed. This person's cultivation level is far above mine. The Dragon Lady replied that it had been too long since she had fought low-level cultivators, and had managed to forget how weak they were. Hearing these words, the boss shouted for his minion to run away quickly. But it was too late. One glance from the heavenly dragon was enough for the upper half of the scum's body to flutter away as if it was not even there. Zhang's eyes went to his forehead. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Why didn't he even see the woman throw a punch, and that guy was already blown into small pieces? The boss thought that now it would be his turn, and it would be the end. His legs wouldn't listen to him. Xiao watched the scene with a smile. Dragon Lady stretched her arms and surprisingly spoke out. "To tell you the truth, I'm a little surprised to see the person I ate rise from the dead. The effect of your cursed seal is just to suckle on me and drink blood? Take it off at once, or you'll regret it." Meanwhile, the hero thought, "So it's really you. You've changed your appearance so much that I barely guessed it was that stinking dragon." Faye smiled again and honestly admitted that he really didn't know how to break that curse. This was not at all how Madame Dragon wanted to hear. She grabbed Xiao Feng's legs and swung him around. In the next instant, she slammed the young man against the pavement with all her might. The woman demanded that the young man break the curse now as she continued to beat him against the ground. Zhang was terrified by this sight. Suddenly, the dragoness realized that the injuries appearing on this guy's body were duplicated on her as well. Blood spurted from the dragon lady's mouth onto the wall. What the hell? The harder I hit him, the heavier my wounds get. If I keep hitting this bastard, it's going to turn into an endless cycle. The celestial woman muttered confusedly. The woman decided it was better to try to make some inquiries first. In her world, she could definitely find a way to get rid of it. Meanwhile, despite the terrible wounds, Xiao was on his feet again. Damn it, he's come to life again. It's the effect of the seal, ran through the dragon's mind. Last time, you just ate me like that. It would be quite fair for me to demand compensation from you, wouldn't it? The young man brazenly inquired. The dragon lady said confusedly that he was the first person who dared to speak to her like that. The woman wanted to know what exactly he wanted. Xiao Fei replied that he dreamed of becoming an immortal. The goddess shouted angrily, her eyes turning red. What did he make up for himself? Did he find a genie or something? After calming down a bit, the dragon lady inquired what would happen if she refused. If you don't give me immortality, I will drown myself in a pool of sulfuric acid and die over and over again. And you will lose your life force along with me, threatened the hero. The woman couldn't believe her own ears as this mortal ambassador blackmailed her. She could immobilize him and lock him in a cell, then find a way to break the curse. There would definitely be plenty of time. The guy replied, "Does she really think he doesn't have a trump card for such an eventuality? Let him check it out." These insolent words of the mortal made the divine dragon even more angry. But the power of the curse did not sleep. It showed the woman its capabilities. Lady Dragon had not expected to see anything like this. Only now did she believe that it was really serious. The beauty changed her mind, and already leaving away from here threw some book into the guy's hands. It is impossible to become immortal in one step. Here, take this basic treatise. You can practice a little at a time. It's perfect for a clueless person like you. Although it won't make you immortal, it will guarantee you admission to a good university and a trouble-free life. The ancient folio was called Precious Technique Treatise. The name of this technique alone sounded incredibly cool. Indeed, simply taking blows would not defeat the enemy. Raising one's own cultivation level was the surest way. Meanwhile, Madame Dragon slyly thought, "What a jerk. Nothing comes for free. I'll get rid of you soon." But before that, she wished to get all the benefit she could from this fool. At this time, Zhang Jibai was trying to blend in with the wall, pretending that he wasn't here. Suddenly, the bandit felt the dragon's gaze on him. Was it really his turn? The red-eyed beauty read his mind and said, "I don't crush bugs that crawl under my feet, but you'll have to forget about what happened today." She reached forward and snapped 2 fingers. Zhang wasn't in a state to think right now. He screamed that he didn't want to die. The next moment, the frightened young man heard the voice of a teacher calling his name. The body-tempering professor Yinjian spoke. "Going crazy in the exam is forbidden. Please be a little more restrained." Zhang's head was splitting. He couldn't remember what had happened yesterday. His head was a mess. He couldn't remember what he was supposed to do today at all. The professor had suggested that today was the first monthly exam of the new semester. The man hoped that all the students would give their best. Those who would end up at the bottom of the rankings could have the school recommend expulsion. The first stage of the exam was a test of body hardening level. The professor announced the beginning of the exam. Xiao Feng was also here. He exclaimed, "What the hell? An exam in the first week after enrollment? Nothing has been explained in class these days." The green-haired classmate replied that this was how it was supposed to be in the graduating class. Everything that was needed was told for the past 2 years. "And anyway, don't you take any extra classes?" he inquired. The hero looked confused. It was the first time he had heard information about extra classes. Of course, all efforts are made after classes. In senior year, you only come to school to take exams, compete in rankings, and charge to the fullest, added a classmate. He was amazed that the newcomer had not enrolled in the course and was sure that in that case he was unlikely to be lucky in this exam. And the young man turned to the fat man and said that his last place, which the boy had occupied for 3 years in a row, would soon come to an end because the newcomer, who had just transferred, had not even enrolled in the course. Everyone in the crowd laughed, expecting Xiao Feng to be defeated. But seriously, I've racked my brain, but I still haven't figured out how that cruel in nature class storm, Zhang Jibai, let you go? The green-haired man already asked in a serious tone. Meanwhile, the bandit looked at the newcomer and remembered that he had feuded with him. But he couldn't remember why he had let him go. The two henchmen who usually followed him. One was blown to pieces by someone, the other died from blood loss. Zhang constantly felt like something terrible had happened, but he couldn't remember what it was. Meanwhile, the teacher announced the first test called punching power. A barrier was set up on the playground. Time to test the student's punching power. The professor wanted student Zhang Jibai to be the first to demonstrate his capabilities. The man considered this guy to be the most capable student. He hoped that Zhang would show real skill now. The young man swung around and threw his spear straight into the barrier. It was a powerful blow, and Jibai's sharp spear pierced the barriers one by one. The teacher was ready to announce the result. 5-meter-thick reinforced concrete walls. The man thought that this was worthy for the best body-hardening student in their school. This level was close to his own. Zhang himself was satisfied with his own result. He felt that he had worried for nothing. He really had an outstanding talent. The cheerleaders chanted his name in a friendly manner. The green-haired man told Xiao that he was very jealous of this result. This Zhang is an accepted top candidate in their class, who will most likely enter Heju Cultivation University without exams, just by hardening his body. This test helps to gauge one's inner explosive, destructive power. No matter what the student uses, body hardening technique or QI, the score is still calculated by the number of walls broken through. Most people only break through 2 or 3 walls in the first month of their senior year, so Zhang's score is first place by a huge margin. Next to take this test, the teacher called Fatty Wu Fei to take the test. The guy swung around and took a step forward, throwing the cannonball towards the reinforced concrete barriers. The cannonball hit the target but got stuck in the first wall. It was unclear if that was it, or if the force of the blow would be enough to penetrate at least that wall through. The fat man clenched his fists. He hoped that the cannonball would penetrate this barrier. It seems God heard Wu Fei's prayer. The cannonball still fell out from the other side of the wall. The young man was jumping with happiness. He couldn't believe that he had passed the exam. Now it was the newcomer's turn. The teacher thought, "Class director, this old man must be out of his mind if he accepted such trash. This Xiao will pull their class to the bottom. Let him watch me expel him today." The green-haired man patted the hero's shoulder and said that he was out of luck. If the young man didn't break through any walls, he would be the one recommended for expulsion. Most likely, this was their last conversation. The classmate sincerely wished Fairy good luck. But the fellow had no intention of losing. He activated his mana. Shafi had managed to advance a technique called the Black Thunder Hell Palm. The teacher couldn't believe his own eyes. Why did this young man come out empty-handed? Did he decide to make a core out of thin air? The man sarcastically said, "Is there a genius in their class who can create things out of nothing?" The classmates laughed at the professor's words. Zhang exclaimed, "With such a hidden genius, teacher, your title of head teacher is assured." Everyone laughed again. Before he could even finish his sentence, he saw a cannonball in the newcomer's hand, which actually appeared as if out of thin air. The hero also took a step forward and swung, taking good aim. The core was enveloped in red-black fire energy. Taking a good swing, the hero hurled the cannonball straight at the target. It flew with incredible force and speed. One by one, the hero's core easily broke through all the stone barriers in its path. The teacher's eyes went to the forehead. Because the newcomer's core easily broke through all the fortified barriers, can he really break through the outer fence of the school? But the hero's weapon stopped, breaking through the last reinforced concrete wall. The teacher wiped the sweat from his forehead. Fortunately, the power of the newcomer's core strike had already ended. Even so, this result broke the record of all previous graduates. And that Thunder Palm, this was the first time the man had seen it in this form. Judging from the explosive power with which he hurled the cannonball, his level of body hardening is also probably not low. To develop body tempering and qui tempering to this level, this guy is incredible. Ran through the teacher's mind. In the crowd of classmates, they said that this guy seemed so ordinary before, but now his awesomeness was off the charts. This kind of talent would not yield to the so-called geniuses of yesteryear. The young man used to keep a low profile before, but now it's clear. He's definitely a direct descendant from some great sect. Fatty Wu tearfully thought that he was stuck in last place for a long time, while the green-haired man frightenedly thought that he had mocked him for nothing back then. A little later, when Xiaofei approached him, the young man looked horrified. "What the hell? What's wrong with you? You look like you've aged 50 years. the hero asked the green-haired man. The one mumbled that he was blind this afternoon. He added if Zhao needed help in the future, just let him speak up. The hero replied that they'd better talk about it later, as he was in a hurry. The next moment, the young man was gone, moving at an incredible speed. The classmate was surprised that he was in such a hurry to get back to training. Outstanding people try much harder than him. Feng quickly moved forward along the dark street. The thoughts in his head were, what the hell is his problem? I know this dragon mortal had bad intentions. Slipped me that secret trashy book with this. Now he must pay the debt for the Black Thunder Palm of Hell with practice. If he fails to meet the deadline, he receives a punishment. A decrease in cultivation level and a weakening of the effect of the seal associated with the bloodline. When night fell on the city, the young man was finally home. The hero was going through all his books in search of a certain treatise. He had once purchased it over the internet, didn't understand anything, and immediately flipped to the last pages. He remembered only one thing, how to activate the technique. Shu clutched his head. He didn't remember what the initial practices were. If he ordered this edition online now, it would most likely be delivered tomorrow morning. Then he would definitely not meet the deadline. Suddenly, the hero had an idea. This book can be searched for in electronic form. The next moment from his room heard shouting, "So expensive!" The neighbors were unhappy that someone was shouting in the middle of the night and keeping people awake, because they had to get up early for cultivation. The hero was amazed at the cost of this book. Last time a few tens of thousands of yuan had almost emptied his pockets, and now these hours had skyrocketed. Xiao only had 8 hours and 31 minutes left before the deadline. Time is going fast. If he doesn't buy now, the whole night might not be enough time to practice. But the young man just gave 50,000 to this class director. He's already almost out of money. After paying 200,000 yuan for the book, the guy's account balance was left with 3,372. With just over 6 hours left on the timer, Xiaofei took up breathing practices. 3 hours and 44 minutes was the spiritual energy management exercise. 1 hour and 5 minutes was the time to practice strength techniques. The hero didn't stop for a minute. He honed his own skill over and over again. He was hurling energy cores at everything in the vicinity. When half an hour remained before the deadline, the system congratulated the young man that the practice process was complete. He had made it in time. But the very next moment the hero was knocked down by something, he fell to the ground face down. At this moment, the island somewhere in the middle of the sky was also awake. In a solitary house in the middle of the forest, several windows were glowing. In the bathroom, it was hard to see anything because of the steam. The dragon lady enjoyed the hot water, cleansing not only her body but also her own thoughts. There was no way she expected that in the next moment blood would spurt from her body. The beauty screamed angrily, for the rejuvenating immortal dew water she had just created had been tainted. Running her hand over the water, she saw Xiao, who was lying motionless on the ground. The dragon mistress immediately realized that this unfortunate person had overdone it during practice and died suddenly. The dragon mistress called the young man a complete lowlife. She had placed a small restriction on him during the practice replenishment process, and he had already failed. The woman reached forward, pointing her hand through space directly at the hero. A week ago, the first day of senior year, a trio stood at the rating board. One young man said, "Boss, you ranked in the top 10 on the placement test." Zhang Zhibai was ranked 10th in the local ranking. The young man smiled widely and said, "With my body hardening alone, I can enter the top 10 of the elite class." The so-called geniuses of this class are only at this level. The girl who was standing next to the guys suddenly shouted. She had seen something important. The classmate pointed her finger at the ranking. It turns out Fatty Wu isn't in last place. The 43rd place in the class ranking was Hei Xin. Unfamiliar trash. It must be the new kid. It's time to set up a test of strength again, Zhang Jibang muttered with a nasty smile. Looking at the ranking after a week, there was no longer a smile on the guy's face. The rookie had only risen in the overall ranking by 10 months, just because of the past one test. At this moment, the boss was called over, informing him that the second test was about to begin. All the students had already gathered in the auditorium, waiting for the test to begin. The one who had taken this exam first was trembling with dread. This time, the students had to overcome the opponent in hand-to-hand combat. The first one couldn't stay on his feet and tumbled to the ground. The end of the fight was sad. The teacher ordered to carry the boy to the medical office. Dr. Sun, with his wonderful hands, would still be able to save him. The hero asked his new comrade what the test was. He explained, It's a test of palm strength and stamina. Compared to the pass punching test, this one is Zhang Jibai's crown technique. The special crown technique of 100 times hardening steel. It's said that none of his peers can pierce through his defense. The boss turned to his new opponent. I heard you have the strongest palm among your peers? Today, you will prove that my hundredfold hardening has become stronger. The young man named Zhao Ying was about to make Jibai pay for his arrogance. He used the forged steel palm technique. With a good swing, he unleashed a strike of such strength that it was simply impossible to stand still. The two opponents disappeared for a moment from the sight of their classmates who were watching the fight closely. Zhao Ying, who was about to celebrate his victory, said, "What's a hundredfold steel tempering?" Just the name alone. But in the next moment, the self-confident young man's eyes went wide. Through the dust that rose from the impact, he saw red eyes and a dark silhouette. When everything cleared, the young man saw that Zhang was still standing firmly on his feet. The boss, with a bloody mark on his cheek, exclaimed, "What kind of fool is this forged steel palm of yours?" Without waiting, he threw a lightning-fast punch at Zhao. It was so strong that the young man immediately flew to the ground. The next moment, the teacher ordered the young man to be taken to the infirmary as well. The man was about to call the next pair when suddenly Jibai stopped him. He wanted the one called He Xin to come out. Meanwhile, Zhao continued to question the green-haired man on the topic of discovered and patented techniques. The young man confirmed that the techniques were basically divided into these two types. This information was commonly known. He surprisingly asked where Fei went to school in 10th and 11th grade. The one replied, "In the third city school." A classmate thought that ordinary high school was not for cultivators. No wonder he had such gaps in his knowledge. Generally speaking, open techniques are something that has long been publicly available. They can be practiced by anyone. And patented techniques are those that have been applied for at the patent office for cultivators. They can only be practiced by patent holders and those who have been authorized. People without permission, practicing such techniques unauthorizedly, will be prosecuted up to and including prosecution and the destruction of the entire clan. The green-haired man explained. He continued, like those two who just fought. The forged steel palm is an open palm, and the hundredfold steel tempering is patented. It's not easy for an ordinary cultivator to master a patented technique because their threshold of entry and difficulty of practice are very high. Meanwhile, the teacher was fixing the floor of the gymnasium with the help of the initial repair spell. When the repair was done, he looked at the newcomer and summoned him. The two opponents came face to face, just a moment more, and their testing would begin. What's the matter? Every time I see this guy, my soul sinks into my heels. Although I only lost to him in one test. Zhang Jibai noted the unpleasant fact. The guy's hand was trembling. If he overcame this He Xin today, he would be able to firmly strengthen his own position. The hero suggested that they should not just exchange blows one by one, he wanted to punch each other in the face at the same time. These words of the young man made Zhang angry. He advised the newcomer not to be so arrogant. At this time, Xiao managed to advance the palm of forged steel. Is he going to exchange blows with me using this open technique? The boss thought happily. But that wasn't the case. The hero had managed to advance the hundredfold steel hardening palm technique. The teacher held his breath as he watched the two strongest students in his class. The boys actually slapped each other's cheeks at the same time. No matter how strong Zhang was, he couldn't stay on his feet from He Xin's punch. The punch was so powerful that Jibai, despite his not small weight, flew across the entire gymnasium. The class thunderstorm landed on the floor, face down. He lay there and didn't move. The spectators were stunned. They sat with bulging eyes and open mouths. Yeah, I wasn't wrong. His initial stance is indeed an open palm of forged steel stance, but the moment he hit Zhang Jibai, he applied the hundredfold tempered steel technique on top of the first one. Teacher thought in astonishment. And it wasn't even because the Zhang clan's patented hundredfold steel tempering technique has a very high threshold of entry and difficulty. Wasn't he afraid of the disaster that secretly practicing the patented technique might bring? Xiao asked the teacher if Zhang should be taken to the medical room, because he seems to be stuck to the wall and can't get off. The teacher was so immersed in his own thoughts that he did not react to the hero's question. The man painted a pleasant smile on his face, like that sly fox, and asked the student who his mentor was. The hero replied, "Master, why are you suddenly trying to seem so decent?" The young man waved a finger at the man, not intending to speak aloud. When the teacher came closer, Xiao whispered in his ear, "Dragon Lord." A little later, Zhang Jibai was already lying in the infirmary and pondering over what had happened. The boss was thinking back to that scumbag who had defeated him. That young man seemed painfully familiar to him, but he couldn't remember. The man in the yellow shirt standing in Jibai's room was looking at Xiaofei's picture. The next moment, he exclaimed, "How can they be so similar?" Zhang called the man his second brother and asked how he knew the young man. The man replied that he could say that he did. But this guy shouldn't have survived. Had the cruel Dragon Lord shown mercy? Former manager Xiao asked his brother what topics would be on the chemistry exam. Jibai replied that they would be taking the exam on the topic of making and inventing poisons. Zhang Jiqian smiled fearfully and said, "That'll be something for me to do." Meanwhile, in the din of the automobile junkyard, loud sounds were heard time after time. It was He Xin practicing the palm of forged steel practice. Over time, the system reported that the technique had been practiced. It turned out that the hero wasn't just destroying old autocomas, he was making money from it. The young man informed his boss that all the written-off cars were pressed off, and even reported that he had already transferred the money to his phone. This person, in order to save money, did not purchase an auto-recycling baler. This is a great opportunity to both practice and make money. The next day, the young man received another message from the system. Please finish practicing hundredfold steel hardening as soon as possible. The hero pondered where he knew someone to fight with at this late hour. Suddenly, the guy was called out, asking, "Are you He Xin?" He replied that the man had made a mistake, and his name was Yin Jian. The stranger was wearing a black suit, his eyes hidden under dark glasses. It was Zhang Jixuan, a 9th level of the spirit calling realm. He said, "Don't pretend, you are He Xin. Young Master Zhang asked me to teach you a lesson." Hearing this, Xiao didn't look scared at all. He came closer and replied with a smile, "You should have said so right away." "I already thought they came to collect the debt." Ji Xuan thought confusedly, "My cultivation level is much higher, but why isn't he afraid of me at all? Judging from my spirit perception, he's only just entered the spirit summoning realm at best. Is this guy really hiding his true level? But a final year student isn't capable of such a thing." Deciding that the young man was deceiving him, he attacked first. The hero didn't have time to dodge, and was already lying on the ground in the next instant. The mercenary was satisfied. He had only confirmed his assumption that this brat was actually a weakling. Zixuan decided not to let the victim recover, but just a moment later, he saw a red glint in the young man's eyes. The one was smiling and encouraging his opponent to exert more strength. He Xin rose to his feet. He was able to continue this fight. The opponent attacked the hero again and again, preventing him from recovering. His blood splattered all around him. The mercenary couldn't understand what the hell was going on here. He was frightened by the creepy expression on the guy's face. Zhang decided that he had had enough. It was time to call it a day, and activated his magic. He used a technique called instant kill in 3 strikes. The last blow from this combination, which hit the hero's solar plexus, threw him far back. The young man slammed his back into the rock at an incredible speed, crushing the rock with it. But when the dust cleared, the mercenary saw that the student was still alive. Zhang condescendingly muttered, "The current high school students are completely hopeless, weak, and still trying to appear strong." But suddenly the man stopped talking at half a word. He saw that the boy's wounds were healing at an incredible rate. Even a healer, at the level of a spirit summoning realm, couldn't do that. The mercenary decided that before this high school student had time to recover fully, he should strike one last blow. Zhang struck Xiaofei with the edge of his palm right at his neck. At this moment, the hero received a message from the system that his hundredfold steel tempering practice was finally complete. Now, the young man could finally respond to his beatings with dignity. In the next instant, an energy core appeared in his palm. He once again used the Black Thunder Hell Palm. He Xin attacked his attacker with lightning speed, hitting him directly in the face. But the mercenary managed to intercept the entry-level spell in time. He was indeed a strong opponent, but those words of his only amused the guy. He was enveloped by yellow energy that looked like electrical discharges. It was his turn to use 2 techniques, using them one after the other. Forged steel palm, tempered steel. This double combo was so powerful that the mercenary was thrown far away from this clearing. The man landed on his 5th point, but remained conscious. Zhang felt that most of the meridians in his body had been severed. Some high school student at the elementary level of the spirit summoning realm had forced him to use ki to heal. He promised to recover and beat the guy to death. Suddenly, the man's gaze slanted somewhere to the side. He saw a ball of lightning in his hand and screamed in terror. The mercenary began to jerk his arm, trying to drop the core. After a moment, he realized that it wasn't working and he was truly terrified. Another moment, and there was a massive explosion that destroyed everything in its radius. The only thing left of Zhang was his goggles, which fell at He Xin's feet. The hero received a message. The enemy has been destroyed. The magic artifact, Dynamic Vision Goggles, has been obtained. They are capable of improving the wearer's dynamic vision, making it easier to distinguish fast-moving objects. The young man picked up the trophy and put it on his face. The next day, He Xin was already ranked 18th in the school's rankings. Zhang Jibai could barely contain his own rage, for this upstart was climbing up the rankings too fast. The boss couldn't believe that this kid was able to finish off the mercenary he had sent. Meanwhile, a girl approached the hero. She said that the rookie's results were growing too fast. Could he share his secret? In exchange for the information, she offered 5 Pei-yuan pills. Other classmates noticed this. It didn't take long for gossip to spread. This mayor is taking advantage of a guy's lack of knowledge, trying to trade such a secret for some ordinary pills. The day of the third test had arrived. This time the students' knowledge of chemistry would be tested. Today is the chemistry test. You will demonstrate your skills in making and finding poisons. In the future, when you get into dangerous workplaces, you can't avoid sneaky blows from co-workers, subordinates, supervisors, and competitors. Zhan Qingyan, a chemistry teacher, told me. If you don't want to die in the workplace in the future, you have to give your best in the exam. Do you understand? The woman sternly inquired. She told me that everyone would receive several samples. By the end of the exam, you have to choose the one that is poisonous. All the others, the non-poisonous ones, must be eaten. The grade for this exam will be based on speed and accuracy of identification. If any of the students can name the poison, they will get extra points. Zhang Jibai grinned evilly as he glanced towards his opponent. His samples had already been handled by the people his second brother had found. He wouldn't live to see the dangerous work, but die right here and now. With so many things stinking together, one wouldn't even dream of finding poison by smell. On the plate were such foods: duji, stinky tofu, durian, and figs. And if you want to check in other ways, our poison has also undergone multiple levels of disguise. The poison masters from my clan don't eat their bread for nothing. As for you, even that chemistry teacher can hardly detect anything. Jibai mentally gloated. Meanwhile, the green-haired and classmate began sniffing his samples. He was finally in the element he possessed. Each of the students tried their own way to detect the poison. Fatty Wu tremblingly dripped something on his food. A dark-haired classmate applied her golden key to search for the poison. The chemistry teacher walked between the tables. She noted Yun Shu, the dark-haired student who was incredible at finding poisons as always. The woman turned her attention to He Xin. She thought that this disciple was still sitting like a pillar of salt, while the others had already started to show off their own talents. Meanwhile, Zhang continued to gloat, for he thought that the newcomer didn't understand what to choose. Still, whatever he ate would be the end of him. At the same time, someone was fishing on the heavenly island. The dragon lady thought that ever since she became a goddess, everything had become somehow uninteresting. The only entertainment was fishing. Suddenly, red tears started flowing out of the beauty's eyes. 5 minutes before, Xiaofei had deliberately started throwing in all the poisonous specimens indiscriminately. Zhang Qingyan was stunned by what she saw. Has this guy gone crazy? Doesn't he realize that he could die from this? The woman thought that she had fortunately foreseen this situation and strictly calculated the dosage. It was unlikely that the guy would die from it, but he could expect a severe diarrhea. Zhang Jibai did not take his eyes off his enemy. He was satisfied with what he saw. His men had poisoned all the food. This would be enough to kill He Xin at least 5 times. The chemistry teacher saw the signs of severe poisoning on the guy's face. The hero fell to the ground. He started to have a seizure. Qingyan rushed to him. She called out to the young man, but he did not react. Leaning over the newcomer, the teacher asked as if to herself if he was dead. From all corners of the classroom were heard phrases. Dead? Not again. Our school will be all over the papers tomorrow. Students who die suddenly in their senior year is a pretty common case. Great! I was 19th, right below this new kid. Now I can get my ranking up. Meanwhile, the teacher was thinking, oh crap. This will probably affect my promotion grade. And who had the nerve to mess up the exam? Is it really that damn gym teacher? He's competing with Zhang Qingyan for the title in this round. He definitely suspects something. The woman was so immersed in her own thoughts that she didn't even hear the hero who had already recovered call out to her. When the woman's gaze finally stopped on Hei Xin, who had already managed to sit on the floor and looked pretty good, she was stunned and scared at the same time, even bounced away from the guy far away. The chemistry teacher was confused, thinking that this was the first time in her career she'd ever seen something like this. Simulated death or rebirth, but this student's spell fooled even her. The young man rose to his feet and said that all 5 food items had been poisoned, including the gut-spreading powder. The hero added that the last one was the poison that killed the heir. Meanwhile, Zhang Jibai couldn't believe his own eyes. This miraculous resurrection simply could not have happened. To be absolutely certain of this upstart's death, he even found a condensation poison expert from his sect. The boss had time to scrutinize this guy's background. He's a nobody, absolutely pure. But in that case, how could the nameless nobody survive the condensation poison expert's poison? That same evening in her lab, the chemistry teacher decided to look into the case that had stunned her in the exam today. The woman was conducting a thorough analysis of some dark-colored liquid using her mana. Finally, she managed to analyze a blood sample of the newcomer. All of his answers to the queries were correct. Qing Yang concluded that it was impossible to come up with such a thing without a cerebral gym teacher. These poisons were created by a true master from the condensation field. After all, it took even her half an hour to analyze this. Meanwhile, Hei Xin himself went to the bookstore after his incredible resurrection. Standing at the shelf, he thought that he had never even guessed the existence of such a way of communication before. It was at this very moment that Dragon-sama contacted the guy. She said it was strange. After all, it was a forbidden technique of his kind and he didn't even know how to use it, some kind of stupidity. The young man fiddled with his own hand, and the Celestial explained that their health charts were now merged, and they could use it to communicate in emergencies. The hero marveled at his own hand and said that such encrypted communication hurt. The guy was surprised that immortals didn't have a better way to communicate with mortals. The dragon in the guise of a beauty who was lounging in the bathtub at the time replied, "Do you really think that being a god is freedom? To humans, we are walking strategic weapons. Every move is being monitored. Immortal Palace. I've already gone down once without permission. If I accidentally come into contact with humans and the Immortal Palace finds out about it, they'll come after me." Hei Xin scribbled a reply on his palm. "Then can you at least tell me where to find high-grade treasures?" The goddess replied that she had already shared what she could. It was embedded in the skill advance. She advised the hero to simply follow the instructions. Immersed in this strange conversation, the young man forgot that he was in a bookstore, and from his wounded palm a pool of blood was dripping on the floor. Suddenly his attention was distracted by footsteps, and just a second later he felt someone's surprised gaze on him. An angry girl, judging by her appearance a store employee, spoke up. "I know there's a lot of pressure on high school students these days, but injuring yourself in a bookstore? Are you serious? Now I have to clean up a pool of blood behind you?" The young man politely apologized, promising that he would clean it up himself. He changed the subject, inquiring about some books. The hero said he was in his senior year and wanted to go to university to study condensation. He was interested in good textbooks for preparation. The saleswoman was pleased and replied that the entrance exams were still almost a year away. It was strange to her that this guy was preparing so far in advance. Hei Xin wanted to know if the condensation area was really so hard. The girl waved her hands and asked, "What are you, a senior student? You seem to lack common sense. If you can reach condensation during the college entrance exam, you're almost guaranteed admission, and if you reach it faster, you can apply for a direct recommendation." She reached out for the red-covered book and muttered to herself that today's kids have very high ambitions. These are the 3 most popular books. If you can fully understand them, that's at least a good thing, added the saleswoman. The hero chose one of the blue-bound books and carried it to the cash register. He told the cashier that he would take this particular tome. It was not one of the books the saleswoman had recommended. She sighed and said, "You're just not going to take advice? Suit yourself." Only after paying and walking a few steps away from the cash register did Xiao start flipping through the pages quickly. The saleswoman thought, "Such this complicated book," and he immediately flips to the last page. This is not high standards, but reverse logic. The young man is hopeless. Meanwhile, the hero entered the elevator. He read aloud. Entering the condensation realm requires the full development of this or body to the 10th level, as well as the aid of a condensation saw. This process can cause the spiritual energy in your body to go crazy, resulting in serious injuries. Therefore, you need a lot of high-quality healing and base-stabilizing medicines. It's expensive and risky. You can still die from this process. From what he read, the hero realized that he just needed to prepare a condensation pill. That same evening, there were shouting sounds in the Zhang family's carefully guarded manor. Leaning back on the back of the sofa, Zhibai questioned the poison master. How did a master like you fail to kill a senior student? The man fell to his knees and begged the young man to calm down. He suggested that something must have gone wrong. The poison master begged for another chance. He promised to kill the boy permanently this time. That rascal is now ranked 10th in the rankings. I won't let him succeed so easily. I'll give you one more week. If Hei Xin escapes death this time too, you'll be dead, the local boss angrily exclaimed. Suddenly, Zhibai heard some strange sound coming from the ceiling of his house. He lifted his head up. Through a huge hole, a hero in his own right burst into the room, his eyes burning red and holding a long sword. One of the guards of the Zhang family estate was scrutinizing the perimeter through the tree crowns. Suddenly, his gaze locked onto a dark silhouette that was lying on the ground a little farther away from the house. Turning on his radio, the guard managed to shout that someone had broken into the estate. But before he could speak, the man received a strong blow from behind in the neck area. The guard lost consciousness from the blow, and the dark figure of a stranger jumped onto the balcony of the house. The three men lay motionless, the hero pausing for a moment, surveying the result of his attack. Approaching the window of the room where the conversation was taking place, Xin just heard this sentence from Zhang. I give you 1 week. If the newcomer survives this time too, you'll lose your head. The hero decided that he had had enough. He activated the red dragon mana in his left hand. The young man decided to attack from the ceiling. The impact was so strong that it pierced not only the roof but also the floor of the 3rd floor. These were the sounds that Zhibai heard. And the next moment, raising his head up, the boss saw his nemesis with a weapon and in his own house. Hei Xin was not going to waste precious time on idle chatter, and took advantage of the surprise to stab his classmate with his sword. The blow struck his left shoulder, nailing the bastard to the couch. Junior Zhang looked really frightened. He had not expected anything like this from the newcomer, especially since his family's estate was always heavily guarded. But the young man quickly recovered and activated his own chi by placing the palm of his right hand in front of him. Xin managed to react in time and blocked his opponent's energy strike, but he had to take a few steps back and pull his sword out of his body. Concentrating, he counterattacked powerfully, throwing his enemy backwards. Crashing through the wall of a neighboring room with his back, Zhibai fell, gutting everything around him. The hero sensed the danger in time thanks to his keen instincts. He managed to repel everything that flew in his direction with his sword. The next moment he was attacked by the poison master, who was also in the room at the time of the attack. The man was masterfully wielding a dagger, its sharp blade stopping a millimeter away from Hen Xin's eye. He dodged at the last moment and was only frightened by a scratch on his temple. With a single blow from the hero, the poison master flew backwards, but landed on his feet instead of falling. Having regained his balance, the man asked, Are you the graduate who didn't die from my poison? I was going to look for you, and you came into my hands all by yourself. The poison at the tip of my weapon is far more dangerous than what you might encounter in the exam room. I used an ancient recipe this time. Its toxicity is quite different, so just expect sudden death, the master said with menace in his voice. The scratch could still be seen on the hero's face. A thin trickle of blood dripped from it. Hei Xin's gaze, which had no hint of fear in it, made the man nervous. At this moment, Zhang Jr.'s figure appeared in the tunnel that was formed in the wall, his right hand clasping the wound on his shoulder. The boss had no sooner taken a few steps than a sword point was presented to his neck. Hei Xin moved with lightning speed. He wanted to finish what he started. Another moment and the sword would have pierced through Zhibai's head. But he managed to dodge at the last moment and the point stabbed into the stone. The hero easily drew his sword and attacked his classmate again, causing him to stagger backwards. While stepping on his friend, the young man had to keep an eye on the poison master. He was loyal to the Zhang family, but he wasn't going to stand aside. He released his poison blades towards the intruder again and again. Xiao had never encountered such a weapon before, but his reactions never failed him. The poison master shouted angrily, "How dare you ignore me?" He tried to shift his attention to himself to give Junior Jang a chance to escape. Given the power of my poison, it should have died, but then why is he still standing firmly on his feet? The man couldn't understand such a phenomenon. In the next moment, he told young Master Jang to flee, while he himself covered the guy with a veil of poison needles. The boss decided to heed the advice, and without wasting any time, he quickly dashed into the hole in the wall. In a few seconds, Jibai found himself outside, right in the air, high above the ground. The poison master shouted, "I don't have time to play, let me show you the true horror of condensation." The needles that stuck into the wall suddenly began to release a poisonous emerald smoke that quickly filled the entire room. The hero immediately determined that this poisonous mist was more intense than the previous needles that were simply saturated with toxins. He covered his nose with his hand, but it didn't help. The poison from the fog settled on his skin and instantly took effect. The boy couldn't stand it for a minute. He fell to the ground, he was bleeding internally. The poison master was pleased with the result of his work. He took a few steps forward to check the condition of his victim. "Did you really think you were immune to any poison? In fact, you couldn't withstand my killing blow," the man exclaimed happily. But he rejoiced too soon, for he didn't know who he was really dealing with. The hero could recover in seconds, so it only took a moment before he was ready to fight again. Taking advantage of the moment of surprise, he struck a fatal blow with his sword on the master's chest. Resting his hand on the floor, Heishin rose to his feet. His business here was not yet finished. From the moment he used the clay avatar technique to deflect the damage, the young man would no longer be covered in blood every time something happened, but blowing up both of them at once. "It seems like he's really encountered something difficult," thought Dragon Lady, who saw the destroyed avatars. She applied her divine chi to restore these artifacts. They would be of use to her ward for many more times. Activating a portal of sorts, she saw with interest what was currently happening on Earth. It was the moment when Shin attacked the Poison Master. The severely injured man exclaimed, "A condensation realm cultivator like me was actually killed by someone from the spirit attraction realm." The master sank helplessly to the floor, his clothes profusely soaked in blood. The hero walked closer and checked the man. He was absent. The guy decided to waste no time and look at the bag. Even if it was empty, the bag itself could be sold for money. Meanwhile, Zhang Zhibai managed to run out to the road. Only there did he allow himself to stop and catch his breath. At this moment, the boss realized that he had forgotten his phone. Now he would have to catch an auto to call for backup. "Damn student, how dare he take revenge on a descendant of the Zhang family? Once I gather the mercenaries, not only will I kill you, I will also destroy your family," the bastard promised. But Heishin was not going to give him such an opportunity. Descending as if from a cliff, he exclaimed, "Who are you going to kill?" Jibai froze in horror upon hearing his enemy's voice. He didn't even have time to straighten his back. It seemed like just a moment more, and his head would roll down the road. Then the hero's revenge would be over. But not to die where the strength was found, he put his arm in front of him, defending himself from the enemy's sword with a purified steel technique. In this way, he injured his arm, but his head remained in place. Before Zhang Jr. could even recover from the first attack, a fireball appeared in front of his face. The next instant, the silence of the night was cut through by the loud sound of an explosion. Jibai was still alive, but the blast wave had thrown him off the road and into a crevice. After flying a good 100 meters, he fell to the ground. Heishin wasn't going to stop there, and jumped down after his enemy. The third young master of the Zhang family put his hand out in front of him, begging for forgiveness and promising anything if his classmate kept him alive. But the hero had no pity for scum. He could be cruel at times like this. One swing of his sword and Jibai's head bounced on the ground, separated from his body. If the Dragon Lord hadn't taken all the damage, you would have killed him several times already. Being on the brink of death, you continue to brag about your origin. Heishin spoke calmly. After setting the body of his enemy on fire, the young man added, "Although I burned your body and removed all the evidence, the Zhang family will definitely link your demise to me. Besides, I'm still using your family's patented technique. It's unlikely to avoid conflicts with them in the future." The hero decided that this revenge was not in vain. Although he quickly left the manor, he managed to grab some valuable items. What were the 3 condensation pills worth? Zhang Sr. had to sacrifice to a dragon to obtain one. The guy had come to the conclusion that the relationship between the disciples of the major sects was really complicated. By the time he managed to grab some gold, silver, treasures, talismans, all of which could be sold profitably later. The system immediately paid attention to the keyword sale and proposed his sales system. From the moment I learned how to get skills up front, these system-influencing windows began to appear. It must have been invented by a stinking dragon. Now it looks even crazier, like big e-commerce platforms, Han Xin thought irritably. The next moment, the hero noticed something that made him go home and clean his browsing history as quickly as possible. The system offered him to spin the Wheel of Fortune, promising good winnings. The guy couldn't resist the temptation and took advantage of the sales section. Dynamic monocle, horizontal blade, poison lotus, gold bars, and other trophies were sold for 154,178 yuan, which were promptly credited to the hero's account. And the very next moment, the system offered him the heaven-opening blade for 1 million yuan. The hero exclaimed, "What the hell? I sold everything for a little over a million, and you want to get that money for one premium blade?" I remember an artifact of similar quality out in the open selling for much cheaper. This is a robbery in broad daylight. The young man decided to spin the drum some more. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it. It just wasn't worth that kind of money. Next, the system offered pants for 50,000 yuan. These clothes were very durable, and instead of pockets, they had space pouches that could hold many items. The guy decided that this item was really useful. Next item, a premium quality boiling blood blade for 600,000 yuan. The more blood its owner loses, the stronger the attacks become. Good quality contact lenses for 500,000 yuan improve dynamic vision by 50%, help you see fast-moving objects better. A 100,000 yuan impact protection t-shirt can be stronger than a person's body. No need to worry about the clothes tearing during a fight. Boots for 200,000 yen that have incredible grip on the sole. They can literally stick to the ground, the effect depending on the cultivation level of the wearer. After his successful shopping spree, the hero had 4,718 yuan left in his account. Tears of disappointment were streaming down his face because money did not come to him easily. Such a guy's reaction to a significant expense only amused the Dragon Lord. She exclaimed, addressing herself, "I still won't let you die easily for putting the blood curse on me." Maybe suddenly the lady realized that she was not alone on her island. She exclaimed confusedly, "My Majesty the Dragon King!" A black cat sat next to the woman. He said in human language, "It seems we have found a way to break the curse of human blood." The Dragon King, in the guise of an ordinary cat, spread his front paws apart and activated the magic pentagram they were in the middle of. I checked. There's nothing special about this guy's bloodline. His descendants could only cast the blood curse on lower-level demonic beasts. They couldn't even withstand the damage it brought, so his descendants often died in low-level battles. That was why no sect had ever shown interest in his bloodline. He Xin has always been a nobody in the mortal world, the black cat told. The dragon lady didn't understand how the young man was able to cast the blood curse on her in such a case. She was the heavenly dragon queen, not some low-level beast. The Dragon King speculated. Perhaps it was because when you descended to the mortal realm, the Heavenly Emperor's limited spell deliberately lowered your cultivation to a very low level. In addition, the guy's strong desire to survive at that moment greatly increased the upper limit of his blood curse. But Hen Xin's curse still depended on his own development level. The development of the spiritual attraction realm could only spend a very small portion of the Dragon Lady's health scale. Once it runs out, the young man will still perish. After a moment, the black cat announced that everything was ready and asked the Dragon Lord to enter the center of the magical star. The woman without further ado went where she was commanded. At the same time, the enchantments worked. The lady wriggled in pain, for the procedure of breaking the curse was indeed unpleasant. The red thread of the curse that connected the goddess and the ordinary mortal became visible. It led directly to the dark windows of the hero's house. Han Xin was sleeping peacefully in his own bed, not even realizing what was happening right now. Meanwhile, a curse thread shrouded in red mana penetrated his chest. At the same instant the dragon lady appeared in the young man's room, she said, "Now this blood curse has taken a very tangible form." The goddess stretched her hand forward. It was as if it was burning with fire. She grasped the thread of the curse that came from her own chest and pulled hard. Suddenly there was a knock at the door of the room. Lady Dragon asked who it was. The woman was annoyed that it was now that she was being interrupted. A male voice came from behind the door. "I am the messenger. The heavenly minister invites you to an audience." The black cat next to her was surprised. "Isn't there a message talisman? Why send a personal messenger?" The dragon in human form sensed that this visitor did not come with good intentions. The beauty entered a luxurious hall that was completely decorated in gold. Lady Dragon boldly stepped onto the red carpet that led straight to the throne. There was a sweet smell of incense in the air. Suddenly, the goddess heard someone ask, "Would you like to sit in this seat?" The next moment, she saw the owner of the voice. A man in a long purple robe emerged from behind a column. The immortal emperor has been alone with his thoughts for many years. The throne is empty anyway, so don't deny yourself the pleasure, the stranger advised Lady Dragon. The woman replied emotionally, "Any immortal knows that what you want most in the world is to take this seat. Stop playing games with me and explain why you called me here." The man smiled and called the goddess just as impatient. "I called you to inform you that your application for promotion to the rank of High Immortal has been rejected," the immortal explained calmly. The dragon gritted her teeth. She wanted answers. When the goddess left her territory and her subjects to join the heavenly palace, she made an agreement. Upon reaching the age of 100, she would become a supreme immortal. The celestial being replied that everything had changed. Now, many lesser immortals were applying for promotion to the rank of supreme immortal. The competition was too fierce. "If I approve your candidacy solely because of the promise you received 100 years ago, everyone else will be dissatisfied. I suggest you accumulate merits and increase your development, then you will be lucky next time," the man explained. He had not yet finished his thought when Lady Dragon had already left the heavenly palace. The black cat, the goddess's chief assistant, was surprised by her quick return. He saw Dragon swiftly overcome the protective barrier of her home. The goddess's eyes burned with angry fire, and she could barely contain her rage. "This is not good. The Dragon Queen has lost control again," exclaimed the frightened cat. The celestial being approached the cliffs of her island at lightning speed. When Lady Dragon collided with the ground, there was a sound like an explosion. The powerful impact sent a cloud of dust and small stones flying into the air. The black cat rushed to his mistress, wanting to know if she was okay. "I'm fine, very fine. I was just letting off steam in my surroundings," explained the Dragon Queen. Meanwhile, in her head, she thought, "The time for training is over. I need to increase the difficulty for this mule." That same evening, in the dark forest, Hai Sin decided to train hard. A little later, the young man received a message from the system that the process of creating the technique of spiritual perfection was complete. The hero was pleased that the foundation for advancing to the realm of true condensation had been slightly strengthened. At the same time, when advancing cultivation to achieve true condensation, in addition to the mandatory technique, other requirements must be observed. The young man decided that it was time to move on to a new level. A powerful red energy swirled him around in its vortex. If anyone had been watching the events in the forest at that moment, they would have been surprised by what they saw. When the dust began to settle, the dark figure of the hero reappeared in the clearing. The young man's gaze became determined. His eyes changed color. Now they were red with a mysterious white pattern. Hei Xin Yu had managed to develop his cultivation level to true condensation. His physical strength, mana, life limit, and spiritual consciousness had increased significantly. The heroes managed to unlock techniques, artifacts, and resources exclusive to true condensation. The system sent a message containing a number of conditions. The hero must fulfill the conditions of the true condensation realm, obtain reinforcement pills, supreme spiritual herb extract, and spirit summoning sphere stages. Hai Xin smiled. Everything was easier than he thought. The system sent the task to be completed. Pass through the secret zone under the curse of exhaustion at a critical time. After completing the mission, the system will deduct 30% of the growth and 30% of the merits as a percentage for advancing the condensation area. If the hero is late, additional percentages will be deducted. The young man thought that the system was talking too much and, most importantly, was not telling him where this demonic cave was located. As soon as this thought flashed through the young man's mind, a portal appeared under his feet. He exclaimed, "Hey, wait, don't I even have a little time to prepare?" At that very moment, a 20-minute countdown began. The hero flew somewhere into the darkness, and he was really scared now. Through the darkness, he could see sharp spikes below him. Thanks to his quick reaction, Xiaofei managed to activate his mana, pointing 2 fingers of his right hand at the obstacle. The young man's entire body was enveloped in red energy, and his foot managed to catch hold of the smooth wall. He managed to save his body from falling onto the sharp spikes by literally clinging to the vertical surface. When the hero's fall finally stopped, His soft spot was separated from the metal spike by a few centimeters. The guy breathed a sigh of relief. This time he was lucky. Although I have a fairly long lifespan, the wound still hurt, and I don't know when the next blood depletion will occur. To avoid this, it's better not to get injured, the young man concluded. Quickly assessing the situation, Hay did a somersault in the air, having already picked out a place to land. The hero landed on solid ground, holding his weapon in his right hand. His instincts told him that it was not yet time to relax. In the next moment, a giant stone hand appeared from the wall. Hei Shinya's red eyes could see perfectly in the dark, and with one swing of his sword, the enemy's limb flew to the ground. The young man noticed that his speed, strength, and reflexes had increased significantly. Although this sword was not a masterpiece that could easily cut through iron, after filling it with mana, he was able to accomplish a difficult task. All this became possible thanks to an increase in his basic development. The hero looked back at the barely audible sound. Something was rapidly approaching from below. Faye did not wait and, moving in a zigzag pattern from wall to wall, began to rise to the surface. He was able to develop incredible speed, but the magical weapon kept up. It seemed that in a few more meters the young man would jump out, but things did not turn out as expected. The white square of freedom was closed by a new stone hand. The hero was cornered, attacked from two sides at once. "Blackheart, Thunderpalm, try this!" the guy shouted, concentrating most of his mana into his fists. It worked. The stone hand was broken, its broken fingers scattered in different directions. The system reminded me that there were 17 minutes and 36 seconds left on the countdown. At that moment, with one enemy defeated, a stone monster began to emerge from the floor. Golems emerged one after another from the ground, holding weapons in their hands that resembled giant lollipops. The hero muttered under his breath that he was racing against time and had no intention of playing with them. He didn't have time to think anything else before he started bleeding. The giant golem's eyes burned with fire as it swung its club. It seemed that in a moment the stone monster's weapon would come down on the bleeding Xiao Fei's head. When the golem's stone mace landed, it kicked up a cloud of dust, and for a moment it was impossible to see if it had hit its target. Xiao Fei was able to avoid this threat, using his powerful mana to strike the stone arm that protected him from the stone giant's attack. The system reported that the hero had lost a lot of blood. Boiling blood was activated, increasing the power of his attack. One precise stab with a knife and the golem is cut in half. After this strike, the system advised the hero to undergo training with the stone golem. They needed to learn how to control it in order to use various methods of attack against enemies. With his new skill, the young man chopped up the stone attackers like vegetables for a salad. Their severed limbs landed in different corners of the room. The hero's new weapon easily destroyed enemies, whose numbers did not decrease. Suddenly, something changed, and the giant stone hand controlled by Xiao Fei stopped halfway to the head of another enemy. At that moment, somewhere nearby, Zhang Zhichan, the manager from the guy's previous job, was once again engaged in his shady dealings. Another unfortunate, vulnerable employee of the company fell into the clutches of the scoundrel. The man came to his senses and saw that he was tied by his hands to two pillars opposite the portal, from which dark energy emanated. She asked the manager in confusion how she ended up here after drinking a bottle of soda. Zhang Jichuan replied irritably, as if to himself, "What the hell? Why didn't I break through even after taking the condensation pills? This dragon isn't even responding to my offering. In that case, I'll just have to pray to another deity for another condensation pill." Only now did it dawn on the unfortunate clerk that they wanted to sacrifice him. "I get $3,000 a month. I do the work of a pack animal. And now I have to sacrifice my own life. There was no mention of this anywhere in my contract," the young man said with his last ounce of strength. The manager took out the document and replied that their company had nothing to do with it. He advised the young man to look carefully because the contract he had signed had been drawn up by an employment agent. The victim tried to focus his blurred gaze on the document, unable to believe what he saw. "Enough talk. It's time for you to go. Maybe in your next life you'll have a brain," exclaimed the manager. The victim begged him not to kill him, but it was all in vain. Zhang's knife touched the poor man's neck. Suddenly, there was an explosion in the dungeon, and everyone present was covered with a hail of stones. The torch that had been lighting up the area went out. Everything around them was plunged into darkness. When the dust cleared, the manager and his victim saw a huge hole in the wall and a dark male figure nearby. "Hey, it's my dear manager who treats his employees like his own children," Xiao Fei exclaimed sarcastically and gave the scoundrel the middle finger. At that moment, the system reported that the unmastered phase of the stone golem had ended automatically. How did you find this place? Question mark. How did you overcome all those mechanical golems outside? Zhang Jichan exclaimed in bewilderment. The hero continued to smile. The young man noticed that the manager was not surprised that he was still alive. He asked, "Perhaps you've already heard that it's very difficult to kill me." He Xin decided that now was the time to mention the manager's deceased brother. The man's face was covered in sweat. My brother? Did you kill him? Did he have a condensation pill that you now have? The next moment, the villain Ji Chan flew into the air, preparing to attack the hero. The young man managed to intercept the blow. He said calmly, "Look at yourself. You don't even care how your brother died. How cold and ruthless the descendants of the sect are towards each other." The scoundrel replied that he had helped his brother destroy Hai Xing only because saving his face meant saving himself. But now that he is dead as his older brother, I have the right to inherit his property, the manager said like a madman. What the scoundrel saw next moment truly frightened him. Zhang Zhicheng did not expect his former colleague to possess such power. The unfortunate victim was still chained to the pillars, and the hero's powerful mana nearly struck the man. One swing of Hei Xing's dagger was enough to leave his former boss without his left arm. The manager fell to the ground near the portal. The blood from the wound attracted black mana. The demonic entity sensed the smell of the bloody sacrifice and wanted to devour it. Something began to happen, and everything around changed color to purple. Xiao Fei could see with the naked eye the ominous aura that came out of the portal. When the hero cut the chains that held the victim, the system reported that there were 9 minutes and 20 seconds left. When the man was free, he said gratefully, "It's you. You didn't disappear without a trace after leaving the company. How did you become so strong?" The hero replied that there was no time to explain now. He asked Golem to get his colleague out of there. At that moment, a giant stone hand appeared from the wall and grabbed the frightened man. While the hero's attention was focused on his former colleague, the wounded Zhang Jicheng was engulfed by darkness. Through the darkness, one could see the purple aura of a deity. The first thing to emerge from the portal was a flaming broadsword, and in the next moment, a blonde beauty in revealing black clothing appeared from the darkness. The hero looked at the stranger through the prism of his magical abilities. She radiated powerful fiery mana that threatened everyone around her. At that moment, blood spurted from the hero's eyes, and he was no longer able to look at the demoness. The young man tried to use his divine sense to assess the stranger's level of consciousness, but instead received a blow. After the woman had completely exited, the portal began to disappear. The creature was rapidly approaching, and He Xin gathered his courage and asked, "To whom was this random sacrifice made?" Instead of answering, the woman silently attacked the hero. He barely managed to stop her blow. The blow was so powerful that the young man lost his footing and fell to one knee, smashing it into the ground. The stranger attacked lightning fast, not wanting to give Hai a chance to catch his breath. Her next blow cut the young man's shoulder. Now the woman prepared to kick him and bent her knee. The guy protected his face by covering it with his hand. Blood flowed from his shoulder, soaking the fabric of his t-shirt. The warlike goddess was enveloped in red mana. Her blows are strong and powerful. When she attacks again, I should use the stone golem, flashed through Xiao Fei's mind. The guy barely had time to think this before he was attacked again by the stranger. His blood spattered in all directions. The woman moved with lightning speed, not allowing the young man to collect his thoughts. Meanwhile, in another world, on a distant island of dragons, someone was overcome with anger. The dragon lady was puzzled by the fact that all the death substitute dolls had exploded at the same time. The celestial being suddenly realized that she was no longer immortal and could die. Meanwhile, her protege's mind was racing. Why didn't I even see the sword swing? They've hit me before. These were his last thoughts before Xiao Fei fell on his stomach, mortally wounded in the back. The powerful stranger looked satisfied, and a golden ring of energy appeared around her right hand. It seemed that in a moment the hero would be finished. The blonde jumped up, raising her katana for the final blow. Now the young man was completely defenseless. In another moment, his head would be severed from his body. But suddenly, a black metal blade prevented Xiao Fei from killing him. It sounds unbelievable, but the hero saved himself. The young man managed to stop the crushing blow with his own weapon. "Do you really want to finish me off with one last blow?" the guy asked, not expecting an answer. Hey activated his mana, pointing 2 fingers at the wall. The next moment, a huge stone golem hand appeared from behind the stranger. The powerful stranger was difficult to catch off guard. Pushing off from the stone, she did a somersault. The hand controlled by the hero fell to the ground, failing to catch its prey. Now the woman looked stunned, seemingly unable to foresee such a turn of events. The next moment, she barely managed to fend off He Xing's attack. The hero was not used to giving up, and thanks to his quick recovery, he was able to fight again. The system reported that boiling blood had been activated, and the damage it could inflict had reached 99%. The young man was pleased that he could now fight for real. The hell that had previously destroyed him. It turned out that he struck first and then finished the casting. No wonder it was impossible to defend against him. Xiaofei advanced confidently. The confused stranger barely managed to fight back. After attacking once more, the young man threw a bloody ball at the blonde. She managed to put her sword in the way and hoped that the steel would stop it. The next moment, there was a powerful explosion. It was so strong that it seemed as if the cave would shatter into pieces. When everything around cleared up a little, it turned out that the stranger was unharmed, clinging to the cave ceiling. The woman's gaze did not bode well. Strange symbols could be seen in her wide-open eyes. The hero was stunned by the stranger's abilities. Not everyone could survive such a powerful explosion. But he quickly recovered and smiled, because he had expected something like this. The system reported that the enemy's skills had been prepaid. A red glow of mana reappeared around his hand. In the next moment, everything around the stranger turned red. At the same time, the hero was enveloped in yellow energy. It was something like heavenly destruction. The hero's red mana moved at lightning speed toward the enemy. In turn, the goddess's golden spell rapidly approached Xiaofei. In an instant, the two energies collided, and it seemed that the cave would not withstand the new shock. Crossing each other, the rays continued onward and struck the walls of the underground chamber. The enemies stood their ground. They were truly formidable opponents. In the next moment, blood spurted from the goddess's chest, and she began to sink to the ground. Hai Xin watched this without turning around, only slightly slanting his eyes. "What? I attacked you first, mine. She should have hit the target, but you're unharmed," the blonde exclaimed in despair. The young man replied with a smile, "Just look at her, she's so worried that she can't even speak properly. And I thought you were mute. Of course, you can strike early, but I can do the same against you," He Xin warned her seriously. At first, he wanted to defend himself against her attacks, but he couldn't. The young man came to the conclusion that this required a higher level of self-organization. "Then I remembered, during your last attack you didn't finish me off, but at the same time you tried to cut my throat. So I thought that next time you might try to cut off my head again," said the hero, barely managing to stop the blade of the celestial being's sword. The blonde didn't even have time to blink before a cut appeared on her chest. The next moment, the celestial being screamed loudly, stunned by her opponent's strength. A drop of sweat appeared on the woman's face. She tried to quickly figure out what to do next. Suddenly, golden symbols appeared above the goddess's head, and she raised her head to the ceiling. The next moment, a warning came from the system. The requirements of the prepaid technology must be fulfilled urgently, otherwise its user will face divine retribution. He Xin raised his head to the ceiling and said, "This is the divine punishment that must be endured by those who use the prepaid techniques of heavenly law." The opponents reactivated their energy weapons. Their battle was not over yet. The woman used both hands at the same time, hoping that this time she would be able to remove the enemy from her path. But suddenly she noticed that the symbols on the golden rings did not match. In that instant, her hands were caught in a vice-like grip as the golem's stone palms dug into her forearms. The woman cried out in despair, "Do you think this will stop me from completing my plan?" This time helped the guy accomplish what he wanted. He received a message from the system that the destruction was complete. The next moment, the goddess managed to free herself from her stone shackles. The woman did not like that a mere mortal was wasting her time. The celestial being folded her hands, preparing to activate the energy rings, but something went wrong. One after another, the rings with magical symbols descended from the sky. Upon reaching the ground, they exploded, and the cave shook again. The system sent a message. "Prepayment for the quasi-condensation area is complete. The necessary development share from this session has been calculated. Your development has risen to the 3rd level of the condensation sphere. New system resources are now available for prepayment." The young man watched closely the place where the explosion had just occurred, hoping that he had finally defeated the celestial being. But things did not turn out as he had hoped. Her hand appeared at the edge of the abyss. The woman barely managed to climb out and fell at the hero's feet. He asked, "Are you still alive?" "I lost. Kill me or skin me. Do whatever you want," said the heavenly inhabitant, bowing her head. "You are different from the others. They beg for mercy before death, but you are surprisingly calm," replied Hae-shin in surprise. The hero swung his sword, pretending to cut the goddess in half with his sharp blade. The woman closed her eyes in fear and waited for death. A moment that felt like a lifetime passed, but nothing happened, and the goddess dared to open her eyes. She looked at her hands and realized that all her wounds had healed. "From now on, let's climb together on the same scale of health," the young man suggested to the woman. Identical runes appeared on his hand and her shoulder at the same time. A blood curse was placed on Lun Yin, and the damage she received in battle would now be transferred to the Dragon Queen. Meanwhile, on the Dragon Queen's island, a bathtub was being filled. The lady's faithful assistant, in the form of a black cat, slept peacefully nearby. Suddenly, air bubbles appeared on the surface of the hot water. The next moment, the dragon lady rose from the bottom of the bathtub. The cat immediately jumped up on his hind legs and shouted that he was awake. "What the hell happened here?" he exclaimed. The woman told her assistant that she felt something strange. Another vampire appeared above the queen, sucking her blood. The system announced, "The prepayment skill has been upgraded. You can now prepay for magical artifacts and elixirs, but the level of the items cannot exceed your current base world level." An unfamiliar beauty with an incredible neckline appeared in the hero's class. "Hey!" Sin looked confused and puzzled. A drop of sweat appeared on his face. One of his classmates exclaimed admiringly, "Wow! What a beauty! Even a calm person like me felt a rush of emotions when I saw her." Another one chimed in. But then he reminded his friend that he already had someone he was in love with. He folded his hands as if in prayer and said, "It's my sin, brother. You know me. There is only room in my heart for Teacher Zhu. There is simply no room for another woman." Meanwhile, the hero came to his senses and politely asked the beauty if they knew each other. The woman replied, "We fought a few days ago, have you forgotten?" The beauty decided to remind him that they were now on the same health scale. "Oh, it's you? You changed your hairstyle, and I didn't recognize you," the young man exclaimed in confusion. The guy wanted to know how she had gone through the enrollment and transfer process to his class. The beauty replied that the same trick worked every time. Meanwhile, 2 days ago, one of the teachers at this school was subjected to a magical influence. "Wow, I've been very lucky lately. I have another transfer student." The man said this while hiding 3 gold bars in his desk drawer. Later, once in the classroom, the homeroom teacher addressed the audience. "The tests are over. Today marks the start of the first mock exam. For most of you, this will be your first real combat experience. You have all studied diligently for the past 10 years. Now it's time to show the real results of your progress," the teacher emphasized. He ordered all students to gather in the exam area. A little later, all the students gathered at a special site, and the exams were about to begin. It was then that Hae-sin first met the beautiful Long Yin. One of the hero's classmates named Mo Xiao said, "Brother, everyone from the 12th grade is here this time. It seems like we're going to embarrass ourselves in front of everyone." Suddenly, a hand rested on his shoulder, and a man's voice said that it was wonderful. The young man smiled in response. Xiaofei smiled and said to his classmate, "We'll do fine, the prospects are great." Suddenly, everyone present heard the loudspeaker say, "The exam rules will now be read aloud. Each class has its own exclusive exam area. The edges of the area are fenced off with a barrier. This is done so that candidates in the same exam do not interfere with each other," the students heard. "Each candidate will fight the same monster. The one who defeats the opponent by knockout within 5 minutes will receive the highest score. Those who are unable to complete the exam will be evaluated based on the damage they inflicted. If an emergency arises during the exam, Teacher Ju, who is in the center of the field, will intervene. The exam officially begins. Students whose names are called, please come down and get ready," the teacher added. The homeroom teacher began calling out the names of the 12th grade students one by one. The hero asked his classmate why people from the insect were present. He explained that it was a mission from the Education Bureau as part of a peace agreement between the higher sex. Almost every high school is required to accept several exchange students from the insect. Hae-shin said, "I thought only regular high schools had exchange students, and I didn't expect cultivation schools to do it too." The young man looked intently at the beautiful girl with long dark hair. The beauty felt the hero's heavy gaze and looked back. Her name was Ryugasaki Hanako. The guy thought that the girl had keen intuition. At that moment, the girl with the luxurious neckline exclaimed angrily, "How dare you look at my master like that?" "I'm the only one who can look at her like that." Mao Xiao said in surprise, "Brother, the hierarchy between you two is really a bit different." Meanwhile, a loudspeaker announced, "The exam is about to begin. Call the exam creature." At that moment, a portal appeared on the platform where the exam would take place. Everyone present saw something gigantic begin to emerge from the purple abyss. When the monster appeared in full, the students saw a warrior whose head was replaced by a fly-agaric mushroom cap. The boy standing next to the homeroom teacher said that this warrior's aura was simply terrifying. "That's the demon lord of the celestial realm who was suppressed by the Taizong sect. Using such an opponent for the first trial exam is too cruel," the young man exclaimed in shock. Tao replied, "Look at yourself, you're always so impulsive. No wonder you're still just a physical education teacher. If his real body were here, even after being suppressed, everyone would die. But all the exam monsters are clones grown from the spores of this demon lord. Although they are also in the condensation realm, their power is lower than that of the observing teachers. Besides, this place is surrounded by stones that suppress power, so there's no need to worry," the homeroom teacher explained to his colleague. Meanwhile, the exam had already begun, and the first of the students attacked the monster with a fireball. The attack was successful, causing an explosion that threw the demon clone back. At that very moment, a loudspeaker announced, "Inflicting any damage on the exam monster before the end of the exam will result in a score of 0. The guy who defeated the monster was upset. The next student wanted to demonstrate all his abilities. He threw stones at the exam monster. But this attack was not enough. The monster responded and the guy was knocked out and fell to the ground. The loudspeaker announced that the effective damage was within the norm, but the candidate left the exam area without permission. This was counted as a failure. The homeroom teacher announced, "Zhang Shuaiwen, 61 points. Wu Li Wang, failure. Qian Jianglin, 68 points." The students watching the fights were amazed that this year's exam was so difficult. No one could score more than 70 points. What kind of perverted teacher came up with this exam? Mo Xiao shouted, "This is great. If everyone else is upset about it, fine, but not me." Suddenly, something that happened in the exam room made the boy fall silent. The physical education teacher said to Tao, the homeroom teacher, "You went too far by making the first mock exam so difficult. This undermines the students' confidence." The man replied that if they couldn't even pass a mock exam of this difficulty, it would be the worst lesson he had ever taught. Suddenly, something on the field surprised him. The homeroom teacher watched as the monster chased after someone. Ryugasaki Hanako ran away instead of facing the danger head-on. Tao did not expect representatives of the cultivation school to do the same. The beauty was rapidly approaching the yellow line, the edge of the barrier that could not be crossed. Was she going to fail the exam right away? But that was too obvious to be true. The beauty pushed off from the ground. She easily took off into the air and rapidly approached the yellow barrier. Pushing off the barrier with her feet, Ryugasaki Hanako did a somersault. The monster quickly approached, trying to catch up with its opponent. The clone prepared to strike the girl, its steel fist rapidly approaching. At that moment, the girl began to draw her katana from its sheath. A few swings of the beauty's sword and the monster was literally chopped to pieces. Ryugasaki's cunning plan worked. She lured her opponent into a trap and defeated him on her own terms. The physical education teacher exclaimed that it was a direct knockout. The beauty received a high score, but her cunning annoyed the audience. After all, the others had worked really hard to earn their grades, but they had failed. The local students wanted to know where this girl came from. Someone in the audience said that she was an exchange student from the insect. She was the best student in the 4th grade. One young man stood aside. He thought that this was only the beginning. There would be an additional exam which the girl had better pass. Meanwhile, some kind of mushrooms began to sprout from the ground on the exam site. The purple eye of the next monster rose from the depths to the surface. The homeroom teacher began to announce the next group of students to take the exam over the loudspeaker. Mao Xiao said, "They're calling Lao Junhao the best student in the 1st grade. He'll definitely get the highest score." Suddenly, the young man noticed that Haishin was making strange signs. The hero was sure that his friend couldn't see anything because it was his system prize wheel. But just in case, he said to Mo, "It's nothing. I just waved away some mosquitoes. Who cares who's number 1?" I'm only interested in what beautiful magical artifacts I can get paid for in advance, said He-shin, as if to himself. Meanwhile, the girls seemed to have gone mad, loudly cheering for the young Mr. Lao. They thought he was incredibly handsome. Junhao had already entered the examination area. The young man was going to prove that even between the two best, there was a difference in level. At that moment, a new monster clone appeared from the portal, looking even stronger than the previous one. Class teacher Tao looked puzzled. "Who came up with this monster?" the man said in surprise. "Interesting. Did you think that by changing your form I wouldn't be able to defeat you instantly?" the young man exclaimed. Golden symbols appeared on his left hand. Lao Junhao decided not to waste any time and immediately rushed into the attack. The young man reached the monster in a flash and, putting all his strength into his blow, pushed him in the chest. The blow was indeed very strong, and the monster flew down, breaking the tiles on the floor and raising a cloud of dust. The young man with green hair was shocked that a 12th grader could possess such power. The man standing next to him explained that Lao seals a magical formation on his hand to increase the destructive power of his fist. This guy has high hopes of guaranteed admission to Peking University or Tsinghua University. The stranger couldn't understand one thing: why this young man wasn't in their class. The man's hands, which he held behind his back, were shaking. When the dust cleared, the spectators saw a large groove formed on the floor of the court all the way to the goal. Lao Junhao looked at his hand and said, "This punch is my guaranteed pass." I proved that there is still a difference between the top two players. But in the next moment, the young man's expression changed, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. A drop of sweat appeared on the homeroom teacher's forehead, and the physical education teacher almost screamed. The monster had recovered and was already looming over the bewildered young man, baring its sharp teeth. Number one was stunned that the monster was back on its feet. Strange. Maybe I turned my waist incorrectly and didn't direct my shoulder, which led to insufficient energy production. In that case, it's worth repeating, flashed through the first number's mind. Suddenly, everyone around heard a warning from the physical education teacher. The man shouted, "Run away from here!" But it was too late. Lao Junhao was ready to repeat his attack. The next moment, something happened that the young man did not expect. The monster was faster and grabbed the guy by the neck. The monster easily threw the guy away from him, and he flew across the entire court like a weightless doll. When Lao hit the pole, a cloud of dust rose around him. A few minutes later, visibility returned, and the audience saw the physical education teacher carefully supporting the young man, who was barely able to stand. Suddenly, the man coughed and began coughing up blood. He thought, wiping the blood from his chin, "I did everything I could to disperse the force, but I couldn't avoid internal damage. This monster shouldn't even be here." The physical education teacher took out his phone and shouted into the receiver, "Hey, is this the education office? An incredible monster has just appeared here. Send reinforcements as soon as possible." The people on the other end of the line must have known about the difficulty of the current exam. Instead, they heard a request to send the most senior teachers. At that moment, while the man was calling for backup, the monster was quickly approaching. It seemed that in a few more steps it would be right next to its victim. But at the last moment, someone grabbed the monster by the legs with energy shackles. The teacher on duty at the playground intervened. The man managed to tie the monster's hands and feet, but would that hold it for long? The fact that it couldn't move drove the creature mad. Its eyes burned with purple fire. Suddenly, everyone present saw sharp spikes begin to emerge from the monster's back. Even without the ability to resist with its hands or feet, the monster was not left without the ability to attack. Spikes flew in the direction of the man who was holding it back. They flew so fast that they pierced through stones. The teacher on duty continued to hold the monster, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to restrain it. The teacher gritted his teeth, thinking that this was not good. The next moment, everyone present saw a powerful explosion. Thus, the monster managed to free itself from its bonds. Now it was free again, and just as dangerous. It turned out that this creature could release not only sharp spikes from its body, but also explosives. At that moment, the homeroom teacher realized that it was now his turn to intervene. The monster managed to assess the situation and jumped back to a safe distance. Literally a second later, fireballs flew to the place where the monster had just been standing. The creature decided to use its own abilities and, activating the portal, dove into it. Ryugasaki Hanako watched the situation closely from the roof of the wall. At some point, the girl realized that it was time for her to intervene. She grabbed her sword. The young man standing next to the beauty asked what she was going to do. The girl replied that she was going to go down and help. Sasaki Kaku exclaimed, "Are you crazy? This additional exam was created specifically to open the way for you. Until this monster accidentally destroys the best students in the class, you are not guaranteed a place in the best universities," the guy emphasized. Hanako replied irritably, "I'm not interested in such despicable ways to get a guaranteed place at university." The girl was sure that right now she would tear this dirty exam monster in half, but she didn't even have time to take a step. Sasaki Kaku used his mana on Hanako, and the beauty fell to her knees and clutched her head. It was a curse that bound her soul. The boy thought, "Luckily, I have a dog leash. Besides, Lord Father's planned operation would be wasted. Hanako didn't inherit any of the cold-blooded and harsh traits of our Ryugasaki family. But my sister's bones still retain the fatal flaw of her original lineage. She is soft, kind, and honest. I don't understand why my father would do this to her own resources." The descendant of the Ryugasaki clan could not understand. Meanwhile, the battle between the teachers and the powerful monster continued on the examination grounds. Old Tao looked stunned. He thought in confusion, "This monster is at least at the 5th level of condensation. Who even summoned such a powerful monster for the exam?" The homeroom teacher used an astral shield to protect his body. When the man activated the defense, he managed to notice some movement out of the corner of his eye. A thought flashed through his mind. "This thing is moving too fast. My eyes can't even keep up with it. All I can do is create a protective shield." While the teacher was thinking about this, the monster grew in front of him, as if from under the ground. The homeroom teacher recoiled in fear, not expecting such a turn of events. The next moment, the demon struck the shield with his right fist, and it cracked. The forces were unequal, and in a second, the monster's steel fingers grabbed the teacher by the throat. The monster looked satisfied he had almost won. Poor Tao's eyes turned white and saliva dripped from his mouth. But in the next moment, the man found it easier to breathe. The steel grip loosened, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that the monster's head and arm had been severed and were flying down. The homeroom teacher's savior was none other than Hei Shin himself. Let's go back 15 minutes in time to understand how the hero ended up on the playground. The young man watched as his companion Mo clutched his head and trembled in fear, repeating over and over, "Monster! Monster! Monster!" Xiao thought, "My friend was frightened by the demonic aura." Indeed, I did not expect that those with condensation could be so easily frightened by the dark aura of this monster. The level of development of this creature is impressive. The girl standing next to the hero suddenly exclaimed, "It's hard to believe 7th level of condensation." Hai noted that the girl had keen perception. Long Yin replied that it was all her body. It senses a strong opponent and begins to tremble. That's how she understands the enemy's class. The girl stretched out her hand and touched the air with her index finger, but something stopped her. Hei Shin said that a barrier had been set up around the perimeter, making it difficult for others to escape. The young man concluded that all this would lead to the destruction of the team. The hero is currently at the 3rd level of condensation. Considering his excessively long health bar, the guy's actual strength is approaching the 7th level. If only he had a cool weapon right now. I looked at all the new weapons that have been released. These are the only top-tier options, but they can only be obtained with prepayment, Hei Shin said thoughtfully. But he decided that these artifacts were really worth paying attention to. The young man chose a weapon called Rhinoceros Under the Clouds and purchased it with a prepayment. The guy placed his short, curved sword next to the new broadsword, and an exchange of energy occurred between them. The hero turned to Long and advised her to stay here just in case when he went down to the platform. He had a feeling that this bonus monster might call for help. The beauty did not argue. She asked in surprise, "Why can't these teachers handle the exam monster?" Xiao Fei replied cautiously, "It seems you have a natural instinct for the strong. But you don't distinguish between the weaker ones. These teachers are at the level 1 of the condensation realm. Only the headmaster and old Tao have reached level 5. If the homeroom teacher prepares seriously and builds defenses in advance, he will be able to handle it. But now he is at a disadvantage, which is why he is losing." The hero added that, on the contrary, it is in such situations that he knows how to act best. At that moment, his new acquisition received the attributes of boiling blood. Then, when Tao's homeroom teacher was already saying goodbye to life, Xiao began to act. With one swift blow, the young man flew onto the platform and cut off the monster's arm and head. When the teacher opened his eyes, he saw his savior. The man was amazed that his life had been saved by a recently transferred student. The outer walls are a barrier that blocks the student's path to escape. Teacher, please find a way to break it down. Leave this monster to me, replied He-shin. Pushing away the monster's hand, which was still holding his neck, Tao exclaimed, "Who do you think I am? In such dangerous times, I must set an example for other teachers and students." The man continued to say something angrily, and at the same time pushed off from the platform with his foot. The homeroom teacher decided it would be best to jump back to a safe distance from the student. During this time, while the teacher was showing his displeasure, the demon managed to restore his head. As soon as that was done, the monster began to regrow the arm that had just been severed. Now, the fully restored monster stood directly in front of the hero. The young man exclaimed, "How quickly you were able to regain your fighting power! This must be a characteristic of fungal demons. They have almost the highest recovery speed." The monster wasn't going to wait any longer. He wanted to finish off his opponent as quickly as possible. The guy managed to react in time and block the blow. He-shin felt that the monster's fist had become harder. The creature moved with incredible speed, its hands shrouded in bright light. The blows rained down on the hero like hail. So that's why he's compressing the demonic aura on the surface of his fist. That way, he can increase the hardness of the surface. Thanks to his superpowers, Zhao Fei could see the auras of those around him. The demon was no exception. This time, the monster concentrated all his energy and delivered a powerful blow. The hero was unable to block this attack either, and he was knocked off his feet and flew backwards. At the last moment, Hei managed to regain his balance and land on his feet. He had not yet recovered when the monster appeared next to him as if out of nowhere. Its speed increased. The creature was ready to deliver another crushing blow. The fungal monster swung its stone fists left and right, destroying the stone. The physical education teacher looked down in horror as the examination ground was reduced to ruins. "Old Tao, will that transfer student die?" the man asked in horror. The teacher replied, "Why don't you go down and save him? You always keep your distance, avoiding danger. The family of that top student from the first grade must have made a deal with you, right? Otherwise, you would never have gone down to save him," Tao said suspiciously, addressing these words to the physical education teacher. The man did not respond, but judging by the expression on his face, the homeroom teacher had hit the mark. "This kid's courage is commendable, but there's nothing we can do." "No one here can solve this problem," Tao added slyly, pretending to be genuinely sorry. "We'll be lucky if we can break through this barrier before the monster gets here," the teacher added. Meanwhile, the monster worked tirelessly, his stone hands never resting, pushing harder and harder through the barrier. The physical education teacher said in a frightened tone, "This story is very tragic. That poor guy must have been beaten half to death by now." The mushroom monster raised his fist for another blow, continuing to bare his teeth as if smiling. It seemed that in another moment the blow would reach its target, but suddenly someone's hand stopped it. The gym teacher's eyes nearly popped out of his head in surprise. The monster itself also looked stunned. The demon was sure that there was no one here who could match his strength. Meanwhile, He-shin received a message from the system. "Boiling blood effect achieved. Damage reaches 99%. Now it was his turn to attack. One swing of his sword forced the monster to retreat several steps. The blow was so powerful that it threw the mushroom monster to the other side of the arena. The monster fell, smashing a rock, but it was still able to fight. When the fungus raised its head, it saw a bright light rapidly approaching. The hero's new sword was about to strike its victim. At the last moment, the monster managed to stop the sword's blade with his bare hands. When He-shin saw that the creature had touched the sword, he used his acquired skills, Dark Sword and Heart of Thunder. The demonic mushroom saw a black core shrouded in bloody mana approaching it. The next moment, a powerful explosion rocked the spot where the creature had been standing. The hero managed to jump away from the epicenter to a safe distance. When the dust cleared, everyone present saw that only the monster's legs remained. But if you looked closely, you could see that the upper part of the monster's body had already begun to regenerate. The physical education teacher was amazed by the achievement of the student who had recently transferred to their school. "Hey!" Sin looked ahead, looking puzzled. Lifting his head, he saw a new mushroom monster descending from the sky. This monster was different from the previous two, surrounded by a powerful purple aura with a large eye visible on its mushroom cap. The creature folded its hands at its chest, and its cap flew into the air, spinning rapidly around its axis. The next moment, sharp spikes began to fly out of the red mushroom cap. Right in the air, they began to transform into miniature combat shells. Xiaofei was not easily frightened, but even he was shocked by the monster's transformation. In an instant, the school was under attack. Many lives were now in danger. No one present could have imagined anything like this during a normal school exam. The students began to run in different directions, but they were held back by a barrier. Amidst the chaos and madness, only He Xin remained calm. The young man quickly got his bearings and activated his ability to control the stone golem. Meanwhile, the students scattered in fear, but they couldn't leave the barrier-protected area, which was now being bombarded from the air. One of the boys looked up at the sky and realized that he had only seconds to live. The next moment, a bright flash blinded the student's eyes. There was a powerful explosion that shook everything around. Shells began to fall to the ground one after another, and the explosions did not stop. One of the boys fell to his knees and covered his head with his hands, already giving up hope. But a few seconds passed, and nothing happened. The young man decided to open his eyes and saw that he was under the protection of a stone shield. The student couldn't believe he was still alive. Everyone around him wanted to know who had created such a large-scale defensive structure. People believed that such a gigantic defense required a lot of magical power and development. Only the best student in their class could do it. Defensive shields were even set up outside the grounds. This was the pinnacle of the student's skill. Long Yin said, "The boss isn't ruthless enough to save his classmates." But it wasn't worth saving those insects with bad grades. As for the best students, you saved their lives for nothing. They will compete with you when applying to university, said the girl, addressing the hero. Hai Xin thought, looking up, "My magical power is almost exhausted, but the one in the sky has also lost a lot of resources." The next moment, everyone saw the mushroom cap shatter into a million pieces. The monster didn't like that his weapon had self-destructed. But the creature was not going to give up. It was much faster than its predecessors. The demonic mushroom reached the ground in a flash and ended up next to Xiaofei. The hero's excellent reflexes helped him grab his sword, which was stuck right in the ground. Performing a somersault in the air, the young man caught the sword and avoided the first direct contact with the monster. The guy landed safely on the ground, but there was no time to rest. At that moment, the demon appeared behind He, his fist rapidly approaching the student's head. The skills he had acquired once again saved the young man's life. He managed to dodge the blow. The hero's new sword was literally saturated with red and black mana. One swing of the sharp blade at the monster's neck, and perhaps it would all be over now. Everyone who watched this fight saw the monster's head roll to the ground. The headless body began to lose its balance, and in a moment, the destroyed monster would be on the ground. But hoping for such an outcome was a mistake. This demon, like its predecessors, possessed an incredible ability to regenerate. A few seconds later, the monster's head was back in place. He Xin decided that a conclusion should be drawn from this failure. By applying lightning magic to the blade, he could chop off the head more easily. But the creature could still regenerate, which meant that the main point was not in the head or limbs, but hidden somewhere in the torso. There was a seam on the monster's head, sewn with thread, which he decided to unravel. The next moment, a purple eye with strange symbols opened in the hole in the monster's head. The young man noticed that the creature's speed had increased significantly. The hero swung his sword, seeing that the demon was already behind him. One swing of the sword, but this time he failed to cut off the head. The creature ducked, avoiding the dangerous blow. But Xiaofei did not have time to dodge the threat. He missed the enemy's powerful blow. At that moment, blood flowed from the hero's mouth and his internal organs were injured. The student was literally knocked off his feet and thrown to the other side of the field. He landed safely, but still couldn't keep up with the enemy's speed. The enemy circled around him like a hurricane. His purple eye turned into a solid circle of purple eyes. He Xing's head began to spin from such speed. Again and again, the student parried the blows that rained down on him. The monster was so vast that its 2 fists could pass for a dozen. Time after time, the monster managed to break through the hero's defense and inflict significant damage on him. The physical education teacher continued to watch what was happening from a safe distance. Unfortunately, the young man lost, and I had already begun to think that this transfer student could change the situation. Tao replied, "I told you it was hopeless. How can a kid beat an opponent with such a huge difference in strength?" But at the same time, the man was amazed by the kid's strength. He was ready to admit that the young man could make it into the top 10 this year. Long Yin also watched the situation on the court closely from the top of the tower. The girl mentally prompted the hero what to do. "Hurry up and use the move that defeated me. What are you waiting for? The young man was barely standing on his feet, his strength gradually leaving him. He's too fast, it's hard to keep up with him, especially since his speed increases right before he attacks. Even in such a situation, Xiao Fei continued to analyze the enemy's actions. Even if I defend myself with all my strength, I can only block a small part of the monster's abilities. The system thoughtfully displayed a health graph. Boiling blood was activated with 150% damage. Hei Xin decided it was time. Thanks to mana, he managed to improve his health a little. It's now or never. The hero prepared himself, waiting for the mushroom monster's next attack. Raising his sword, he repeatedly parried the creature's stone fists. The physical education teacher noticed that the young man had just taken up a stance but was not moving at all. What was he up to? A question mark? Had he given up? Meanwhile, Hei Xin realized that the time had come to use the heavenly law of destruction. The monster literally rammed into the hero's sword, which was held out in front of him. Suddenly, something incomprehensible happened. A red beam flew out of the monster's body and hit the protective barrier. It was so powerful that the protection created by the old Tao could not withstand it and shattered into energy fragments. The class teacher was stunned because he had never managed to break the barrier. Could the protection have been destroyed by accident? Tao suddenly realized that being a teacher did not bring him joy. Maybe he should just quit. The attack continued, and people were in grave danger. The deadly weapon was rapidly approaching the school and the surrounding area. Run! There's a barrier outside. Run in other directions! Someone in the crowd shouted, warning the other students. Xiao Fei used his own qi to create a protective barrier, thus saving himself from the weapon. The next moment, the hero bent down and struck the ground with his hand. He tried to activate the stone golem shields. One of the frightened boys shouted, "With such a large area covered, it's impossible to escape." The frightened boy saw the projectile approaching him in slow motion. A second later, there was a powerful explosion and people lost their sight for a moment. Dust and small stones from the broken pavement rose into the air. It was almost impossible to see anything. There was not just one explosion. About 100 shells exploded simultaneously. The young man closed his eyes, covered his head with his hand, and trembling with fear, waited for death. Only in the next moment did the young man realize that a huge stone shield had saved him from death. Who set up such a huge protective formation? People asked each other in confusion, still not believing that the users would be saved. Such a large-scale formation requires a great deal of cultivation, which is definitely the work of one of the best students. After all, the lady is not so unprincipled if she decided to save her classmates. Those with mediocre grades didn't need to be saved, but as for the best ones, Long Yin said to herself, everyone you save in the future when you enter the Cultivator University will become an arrow that will fly at you, she added, addressing Xiao Fei. The hero understood that his qi reserves were almost depleted, and surely the one on the mountain was in the same situation. The next moment, the huge mushroom levitating in the air above the enemy exploded. The sleepless creature bared its teeth. It was not going to stop. The monster was incredibly fast, and in a second it disappeared, as if it had dissolved into thin air. The next place the creature reappeared was the square near the school, literally behind the hero's back. Hei Xin reacted in time and was able to kick his sword out of the ground. Doing a somersault, the young man caught the weapon in midair and managed to avoid the monster's attack. The hero landed safely on his feet, but he had no time to catch his breath. The monster was already close. Its stone fist was rapidly approaching the young man's head. Xiao's instincts helped him again, and he managed to get to his feet and fight back. The hero's sword reached its target, and the monster's qi was disrupted. The creature lost its head, lost its balance, and began to fall to the ground. But the monster's regeneration was simply incredible. Its head began to grow back in its original place in a matter of seconds. Another minute, and the monster had its head back, albeit blind. The hero thought, after casting the thunder spell on the sword, it became much easier to cut off the monster's head, but if it grows back, it means that its weak spot is not there. I need to strike at its torso. At that moment, the creature pulled on the thread that held the cut on its face together. The next moment, a huge purple eye appeared on the monster's head. Now it became even more dangerous. A second ago, it was standing still, but in the blink of an eye, the enemy disappeared. The young man noticed that the monster had managed to speed up again. He had expected something like this, so he was ready for an attack from behind. Xiao Fei attacked first, but the creature bent down, avoiding the blow. The monster was faster, punching the hero right in the stomach. The blow was so strong that it threw the young man far back. Drops of blood flew from his mouth. He regained his balance, but He couldn't focus on the monster because it was so fast. The only thing he could see in the whirlwind was a purple eye that filled everything around him. Zhao was trapped, as if in an enchanted circle. He had to do something. The hero barely managed to fend off attack after attack, and he could only do so thanks to his sixth sense. His instincts were heightened. Due to the monster's speed, the blows rained down on the young man like hail. The young man was simply physically unable to keep up with all of his opponent's attacks. The teacher, who was watching the fight closely, said, "He's going to lose after all, and I thought this newcomer would be able to turn the tide of battle." The homeroom teacher replied, "I told you it wouldn't work. With such a huge difference in strength, how can he possibly win?" But the fact that this young man, despite being at a disadvantage, is standing up to this hellish creature proves that he is one of the 10 best graduates. The dark-haired beauty watched the fight silently. She heard the teacher's conversation. She mentally appealed to Hai Xinyu. "Quickly use the technique you used to defeat me." "Well, what are you waiting for?" Meanwhile, the hero was holding on with his last ounce of strength. He could barely stand on his feet. Too fast, especially that acceleration before the attack. "Even giving my all in defense, I can only block a small part of the attacks," Zhao thought. The young man activated the system menu, realizing that the moment was almost upon him. The boiling blood effect could add 150% to the power of his strikes. As soon as Hai Xin activated the effect, his sword was enveloped in powerful red energy. In the next moment, the hero rushed at the enemy with new strength. The new capabilities of his weapon allowed him to stand up to the monster. Now he could block every blow that continued to rain down on him. The teacher, watching the fight from the mountain, shouted, "He just took a stance, but he's not moving. Has he decided to give up?" But in the next moment, the impossible happened. The creature stumbled upon the hero's red-hot sword. The energy of this blow was so powerful that it almost hit the teacher on the tower. The beam reached the school, and glass scattered in all directions. The homeroom teacher was stunned that the boy's energy could destroy a barrier that he himself had been unable to destroy. The man thought that in that case it was time for him to resign. The creature was blown to smithereens by the hero's sword. The hero received a pill made from an umbrella mushroom slug. After a certain period of cultivation, it can be controlled by the spellcaster to help in battle. This was the reward Xiao Fei received for this battle. The system advised the young man to replenish the spell process of the silent heavenly law technique. The young man folded his hands in front of him, imitating a certain symbol. A yellow-orange energy appeared around him. The process of casting the silent heavenly law spell was complete. The teacher who had been watching the fight said in confusion, "I didn't even see the last blow. Lao Tao, can such power really only be found in the top 10 of the class? It seems he can compete with the best." Not hearing a response, he looked back. The hero's homeroom teacher was silent. Xiao Fei received another message from the system. "The level of truth concentration has been raised to 9. Now you can introduce techniques to others through advances." The hero was walking in the park with a beautiful girl. Looking at her phone, she said that he was currently trending. "Everyone is writing that you are the dark horse among the students and that you will definitely be accepted without exams to a key university," the girl read with admiration. Long Yin looked at Hei, wanting to know what he was doing. He replied that he was just paying for medical insurance. In fact, the hero was wondering whether to give the Dragon Lord 30% of the cultivation and other achievements he had gained from this practice. "She didn't help me in battle, but now, until you pay the insurance, there will be no treatment," the guy thought irritably. He looked up at the sky, smiling as he watched the red rectangle disappear. "You've changed, Dragon Lord." The red card with hieroglyphs disappeared into the heavenly distance. The hero managed to notice a black hole appearing in the blue sky. This phenomenon slowly spread, enveloping the sunny day in darkness. The green trees of the park disappeared into the impenetrable darkness. The girl looked confused. Zhao said, "This is the forbidden zone of the dark abyss. You can't enter or leave, and you can't see anything from the inside or outside. Usually this barrier is set up when they want to destroy witnesses." The next moment, sharp daggers began to fall from the sky, right onto the heroes' heads. Xiao was unharmed, as the daggers stuck in a magical stone-like shield. Something really strange was happening. One of the daggers had a character on it that began to glow yellow. The next moment, there was a powerful explosion, and flames and stones filled the air. Long Yin barely managed to jump out of the way. She landed safely on the green grass, far away from this hell. Suddenly, the beauty froze in shock and looked down at her feet. Instead of ground, she saw a black, viscous substance. It resembled an oil spill. The girl could not imagine what kind of energy it was. The hero also managed to jump away from the epicenter of events, to strike small explosive formations directly at the shurikens, and also use the technique of the bottomless sanctuary to pull in the student, is the art of the highest mastery, Xiaofei exclaimed with delight. Suddenly, the guy felt a rapid movement behind him. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a beautiful woman with long dark hair holding the hilt of a katana. When Ryugasaki attacked, Hei already had his sword in his hands and managed to parry her attack. The hero's attention was drawn to the back of the sword. The next moment, the weapon flew out of the hero's hands. Ryugasaki performed an incredible pirouette in the air and caught the young man's sword. The girl landed away from the hero, holding a sword in each hand, one her own and the other her opponent's. Xiaofei said in shock, "Was this whole operation carried out just to take my weapon away? My father said that you are my opponent on the path to admission and ordered me to kill you. But I don't like this method, so I plan to return with your weapon and say that you died," Hanako said through clenched teeth. "But you must leave this country and forget about the entrance exams. Otherwise, as soon as you show up at any school and find yourself among the best, the people from the eastern source won't leave you alone," the beauty added. One of the swords in the girl's hands began to glow with a green, flickering chi. The system informed Xiao, "The additional weapon task, Legacy of the Heavenly Mountain, has been activated. The mirror wasteland of the past will begin soon." The young man looked down and saw black energy swirling and forming a circle at his feet. The same thing was happening around the girl's feet. She had never seen anything like it before. Ryugasaki decided to take her salvation into her own hands, and in the next moment she pushed off the ground with all her might. Like a bird, the girl flew effortlessly onto a tree branch. The beauty's eyes were wide open, making her face look frightened. She sat on the branch and waited to see what would happen next. After thinking for a moment, Hanako decided it was time to get out of there. She easily jumped from the branch to the roof of the nearest building. The beauty couldn't understand what kind of place this was and how she had ended up there. The next moment, Xiao appeared beside her. The young man explained, "The mirrored wasteland of the past is a secret dimension where you can only observe memories of the past but cannot interfere with them. The weapon you saw is probably connected to you, so it activated as an additional task as soon as it was in your hands. The additional task forcibly dragged us into this mirror trap." The girl looked at her hands and realized that the weapon had disappeared. The hero added that the real body of this sword must be here, in this void. If it is not found, the blade will not return to the hand. Suddenly, they heard the words of a song. "I envy your love. Its scope is amazing." As if... Hanako exclaimed, "This song, why does it seem familiar to me?" Suddenly, the attention of the two was drawn to some movement on the ground. Someone was rapidly approaching. They saw a girl in a tracksuit running quickly toward the gate of the house. The teenager pushed the gate open and shouted to her dad that she was home. A tear appeared on Hanako's face. It seemed to be a memory of hers. Once in the yard, the girl saw a terrible scene. Dead people were lying on the ground. It was her family. Among the bodies, the girl recognized her brother and sister. A little further away from her children lay her murdered mother, a sword sticking out of her stomach. The shocked girl suddenly heard the words, "Oh, you're back!" The beauty looked back and saw a man, her older brother from school. His face was covered in blood. Ryugasaki asked, "Why are you wearing clothes from the east?" The young man did not answer, only smiled eerily, his face looking insane. Meanwhile, at the Blooming Grass Elementary School, a 5th grade class was having a training session. A dark-haired girl directed all her anger toward improving her own fighting skills. The beauty achieved considerable success, hitting her targets accurately. The girl threw knives at the target without stopping, and she never missed. She finally stopped to catch her breath and looked at the result of her efforts. Suddenly, the teenager heard a voice coming from somewhere on the mountain. "Not bad. Not bad. Your technique is better than mine was at your age." The girl immediately recognized her older sister. She smiled and added, "But you missed one." The beauty explained that there was also a target behind that tree, which her younger sister had not seen. The girl said nothing, but silently threw the knife. The older sister exclaimed, "Really? The same technique? When you throw the second knife so that the first one changes its trajectory in the air." Meanwhile, with a characteristic sound, cutting through the air, the blade hit the tree trunk. The girl possessed a powerful energy field, and without hesitation, she threw the second knife. The impact was powerful enough to pierce the tree trunk. It flew out the other side right through the center of the target. Was that really possible? Just knock it out from behind? said the older sister, a little confused, as she came closer and looked at the empty target. The younger sister replied, "The most important thing is that I hit it, right? Okay, I'll count it. It's late, time to go back," said the slender beauty. A little time passed, and the girls reached their house. Their father pet his younger daughter's head and said, "My dear daughter, how did your training go today?" The teenager replied that she had met all the standards and even hit the target behind the big tree. Suddenly, the sound of a tree splitting caught the girl's attention. Hua Zheni from the Flower Clan was training nearby in the courtyard. "My older brother's sword technique seems to have improved since his training," said the girl. "Father, are you really going to pass on our family's sword to him?" asked the eldest daughter. The man replied that he was still thinking about it. Although this boy was not from their family, he had been studying at the school for 3 years. "Over the years, I've observed him closely. He's a very polite, kind, and sincere boy," the man added thoughtfully. Hua Zheni tried his best to please his teacher, bringing him tea every morning. "Teacher, I'm not tired. I can endure any hardship." The young man demonstrated his strength by carrying a huge stone on his back. "Teacher, it's my fault. Please don't punish my fellow students," the man continued to recall his students' good deeds. The girl's father considered this young man to be a remarkable young man who deserved the family heirloom. At that moment, the stone wall was pierced through by a sword. The teacher stood by the wall, a weapon sticking out of his chest. The father of the beauty grabbed the sword sticking out of his chest with his hand. He couldn't understand why. "Why, of course, because I was never yours from the beginning," the best student said with a mad laugh. "I was born into the Eastern Source clan and hid here for 6 years under a false name. I did this only to learn your family's unbeatable sword technique," continued the traitor. Now that he had mastered the secret art, he was going to destroy his teacher's entire family. "Even if you manage to attack me treacherously, there are others in the courtyard. You will not escape unscathed," the master said with his last ounce of strength. At that moment, they heard the sound of a door opening and saw a bloodied hand. The next moment, the master's eldest daughter appeared in the courtyard, wounded and barely able to stand. The girl held onto the wall to keep from falling, leaving a bloody trail from her hand. After taking a few more steps, the girl fell to the ground, and her father screamed in shock. "You bastard! You poisoned my family!" The wounded man cried out helplessly and desperately. Lao Junhao approached and drew his sword. "Our Eastern Source clan always adheres to the principle: steal the skill, destroy the family. It's a pity that your youngest daughter hasn't returned from class yet. Her talent amazes me." At that moment, they heard the girl's voice. "Dad, I'm back!" The master fell to the ground and grabbed his former student's cloak. He begged him not to touch his daughter. "Don't worry. Hua Qianhui's spiritual root is incredible. I will erase her memory and take her as my adopted daughter. I won't have to wait long. When she enters university, I will take her spiritual root, and you and your daughter will meet again," said the traitor Lao. The wounded father coughed, blood flowing from his mouth onto the floor. "I've been waiting for you, little sister," said Junhao, addressing the girl. "I got tired of waiting, so I had to kill your whole family to make time go faster," added Lao with his usual maniacal smile. A sword appeared in the girl's hand, and she rushed at the scoundrel. The girl's attack was incredibly powerful, and several daggers flew at her former friend at once. Junhao did not move, as if he was waiting for the girl's weapons to pierce his body. The method of throwing knives in all directions hits dead zones accurately. "In your clan, you are the best at this technique," said the young man, deflecting the knives with his superpower. "But for me, who has mastered the practice of the invincible sword, all this is useless," he added. As he spoke, the girl attacked again, and in another moment her knife would pierce the head of her family's killer. But, unfortunately, it was all in vain. The scoundrel was quicker and more cunning. He grabbed the little avenger by the neck. The traitor's eyes burned with red fire. With incredible strength, he threw the girl to the ground, the stones of the courtyard beneath her body shattering into pieces. The girl lay motionless, knocked unconscious by the blow. Lao Junhao reached out his hand over his younger sister in learning and cast a spell that would erase her memory. "From now on, you are my daughter, Ryuzaki Hanako. I will take you into the Eastern Source clan and train you well until that day comes." The magic worked, and the girl came to her senses and bowed to the traitor, considering him her father. Wanting to cover up the traces of his crimes, the scoundrel set fire to his teacher's house. When everything around them was engulfed in flames, the head of the Eastern Spring clan and his new daughter left. Hanako froze in place, unable to take her eyes off the wall of fire. The flames danced, consuming everything in their path, and the girl watched the scene as if spellbound. The beauty's face was contorted with anger, and the green eyes reflected the glare of the fire. The hero turned to Ryudosa, saying that while here, one must not interfere, only observe. But Hanako no longer heard him. With her sword in her hands, she jumped up to punish the scoundrel who had killed her family. She attacked from the air, and in another moment the beauty's weapon would split the traitor's skull in two. But everything happened differently. The beauty could not inflict any damage on Lao. The man froze in place as if he had sensed something, but saw nothing. "What is it, father?" the girl asked. Lao replied that he thought he heard someone approaching, but it was probably just the wind. "Let's go. When we return, we'll find someone to teach you our language," said the man, leading the girl away. She did not argue, but the adult Hanako collapsed, trembling. "All these years I thought this scoundrel was my father," the girl whispered, bursting into bitter tears. The system announced that the scene had changed. The mirrored emptiness of the past was replaced by an interactive physical scene. The hero needed to find the key item, Legacy of the Cloud Mountain. Xiaofei told his new acquaintance about this. Now, the new friends were in the place where the girl's house used to be. Now, everything around was covered in ruins. This was the current state of her home. Fei said, "It's worth looking for something. You can take it with you as a souvenir." The beauty replied, "I checked with my spiritual consciousness. There must be something down there, but it seems to be buried deep." The hero activated his chi and offered Hanako his help to quickly dig up what she had sensed. At that moment, a huge stone golem's hand appeared from under the ground. When the palm opened, the friends saw a rare, beautifully crafted sword and a diary. The girl looked at the weapon in surprise and asked the guy if it was his broadsword. Hai Shin shook his head. The young man took the weapon in his hands and handed it to the girl, saying that it was a sword for her. The beauty looked confused as she took the find in her hands. "Your father left you this sword, and it has already led you to your true self. It rightfully belongs to you. In addition, there is an explanation of fencing here, which your father also left," added the hero. Opening the diary, Hanako saw that what was written in the notebook was dedicated to the techniques of the unbeatable sword. She didn't finish her sentence, which caught Xiaofei's attention. He wanted to know what had happened. Practicing these techniques is incredibly difficult. It can take decades to reach even the beginner level, the beauty said with despair in her voice. But she couldn't wait that long. Her thirst for revenge made her tremble. Even if she could pretend, that bastard Ryuzaki would soon sense the change in her. Suddenly, the girl heard the phrase, "No need to wait." She was stunned by what she heard. Hanako quickly turned around, intending to find out what he meant when suddenly the guy's fingers touched her forehead. The beauty felt a foreign energy penetrate her. The powerful red chi of Hei entered her head directly. The girl froze in place, as if spellbound. She said in amazement, "Techniques and verbal instructions flooded into my mind without stopping. For Hua Qian Hui, the blade that destroys power technique is provided." The system reported that the processing of this technique has begun. 30% of the cultivation and rewards obtained in this process will be received by Heishin as interest. The hero explained that this was the system panel. As soon as she accepted his gift, she would be able to see it. If Hanako did not agree to pay him a percentage, she could refuse the offer. Suddenly, the girl behaved in a way that was completely unexpected for the hero. She fell to the floor and bowed at his feet, saying, "My teacher, please accept the bow of your student. Get up quickly. I accept you as my student. I just accepted you as my student, so I don't have anything special to give you as a gift. Later I will give you a set of magical clothes," Xiaofei said with a smile. At that moment, the system sent a message. The additional task for Legacy of the Heavenly Mountain has been completed. The beauty glanced at her hand where a red symbol had appeared. The girl waited for her new teacher to explain what it meant. The hero showed his hand with the same symbol and said, "With this bloody curse, from today onwards, you and I are teacher and student, bound by one life. From this day forward, I will take all the damage you receive. Remember, this blade has a boiling blood effect. The more damage you take, the higher your attack power will be." When the young man finished his explanation, he noticed the girl's face. Her expression had changed. The beauty seemed to be immersed in the past, and she heard a familiar, angry voice. "Hey, your father is talking to you." Although Hanako showed a flaw in her character during the exam, fortunately, she came to her senses in time, removed the obstacle, and also obtained this valuable sword for me, said the head of the sect. It was none other than Ryuzaki Saidi, who had grown considerably older and now had a mustache. Hanako said, "I have one question that I don't quite understand myself. I would like to ask you for clarification. An angry young man named Ryoranzi Kakugun said, "Hey, why aren't you using the appropriate form of address? Where are your manners?" The beauty replied through clenched teeth, "Are the things you have done really equal to what is written on your face?" The young man's eyes bulged at Hanako's insolence. "What do you mean? Have you been doubting my humanity and justice all these years?" The girl gathered her hair into a ponytail and replied, "Does so-called humanity and justice mean that you talk day and night about virtue, rituals, wisdom, and loyalty, while behind our backs you rob, kill, and destroy entire families?" Kakugan jumped to his feet and shouted, "What are you saying? Everything my father did was for the sake of our clan." Hanako paid no attention to these words and continued, without looking up from her hairstyle. "He knows minor etiquette but has no great righteousness. He follows minor rules but has no great virtue." The girl decorated her hair with a clasp that reduces the use of spiritual energy during divination. "He pays attention to trifles but ignores shame and honor, fears power, and does not remember kindness," Hanako continued, changing before our eyes. System message. Mask dress, horse head. The power of your techniques that use spiritual energy is increased by 30%. This dress can absorb your spiritual energy for automatic recovery. The beauty immediately felt a surge of chi. As soon as she clenched her hand, the sword lying on the table in front of Ryugo-saki began to move. In the next moment, flying across the room, the weapon ended up in the girl's hand. Hanako's words sounded like a sentence. "It yields to the strong, but robs and kills the weak. This is unheard of insolence. Today I will destroy you for the sake of my father's name," Kakuo shouted like a madman, jumping up from his seat and swinging at the beauty. She was quicker and had been expecting something like this, so the man's attack was met with fierce resistance. The blow was so powerful that the scoundrel flew across the room and smashed through the window. "It seems you somehow found out about everything. In that case, I will no longer pretend," the sect leader said calmly. The next moment, the man shouted, "Come on!" calling his guards. It seemed he had no intention of taking responsibility for his actions himself. A moment later, Hanako heard footsteps rapidly approaching. A few seconds later, the room was filled with the cult's henchmen. Even at a moment like this, the scoundrel who had once destroyed the girl's family had no intention of fighting fairly. With an evil smile on his face, Ryugasaki ordered his men to act. Now, nothing held back the sect's loyal dogs. Like possessed creatures, they rushed at the girl with swords in their hands. Hanako looked completely calm, as if she was not afraid of such a number of fierce opponents. She easily parried the first attack, still standing in one place. The next attacker received a precise kick right to the skull. He had not yet fallen from the blow when another sword was aimed straight at the beauty's face. One precise blow with a sharp katana cut the attacker in half. Hanako noticed the small daggers rapidly approaching her, spinning through the air at incredible speed. Today, the girl felt incredibly strong and agile. She could handle any number of enemies. She deflected one of the daggers with her sword, and it returned to its owner like a boomerang, slashing his stomach. The two scoundrels standing next to their wounded friend stared at him in shock. The charming swordswoman found herself surrounded. It seemed impossible for her to emerge victorious from this battle. The cult leader ordered his subordinates to kill the girl, and they rushed to carry out the order. Hanako bravely parried blow after blow, tireless and attentive, with no desire to win. She was now driven by revenge. One of the villains shouted, "Push her down! Hold her! The others will pierce her through with their blades." It seemed that in a moment the beauty's life would be cut short. She would finally meet her parents. But the beauty had a plan. A wall that appeared instantly, and a bright flash of lightning bought her time. Taking advantage of the situation, the girl left the crowd and rushed upward. Her movement was so powerful that she broke through the roof and found herself above the house. Blue lightning bolts danced around her. The scoundrels who had tried to kill the fragile swordswoman looked up at the sky in confusion, trying to figure out where she had gone. One of the sect's loyal soldiers, standing directly under the hole in the roof, didn't even have time to understand what was happening before he was cut in half. Another, seeing his friend die, crept up behind Hanako and raised his sword to strike. But it was all in vain, for the girl moved with lightning speed, and the man didn't stand a chance. The next moment, his severed head flew to the ground. Each subsequent blow of the girl's sword took the life of another attacker. Hanako was unstoppable, like an uncontrollable hurricane, leaving only destruction in her wake. "What the hell? So many people can't handle one girl?" shouted the head of the Eastern Source sect in rage. The man ordered his subordinates to maintain their formation. The crowd began to whisper, Do these idiots really think they can win by sheer numbers? Although the patriarch picked up this girl on the side and she did not inherit his fighting talent, her insight with the sword is one of the best in the clan. One of the three swordsmen of the Eastern Source, Okavamintai, said, "Until we, the three swordsmen of the Eastern Source, intervene, this girl will not stop." The second swordsman, named Nagano Tyukyu, agreed with his comrade. He said to the first, "Then why haven't you acted yet, but have been hiding here for some time now?" Okava replied, "Do you think I'm an idiot? All three swordsmen here are spectators and I'm the first to jump in and get turned into mincemeat? Besides, my art decides everything instantly. How can I not wait until she reveals herself?" A little more time passed, and the floor of the sex hall was covered with the corpses of her soldiers. To say that Hanako was tired would be an understatement. She was barely breathing, and her face was covered in beads of sweat. The girl leaned over her first sword, trying to calm her breathing. Ryugasaki thought to himself, "She's clearly tired. This is a good chance. I have to take it." Now it was the turn of one of the three swordsmen of the Eastern Source to intervene. The brave warrior decided to take advantage of the beauty's fatigue and thus emerge victorious from this battle. Hanako's expression changed from tired to stunned. Now that she was so tired, one of the sect's best warriors came out against her. This time, she did not have time to react in time. Blood spurted from the girl's neck. Long Yin was not far from the scene. "This girl's aura is getting weaker," said the beauty, looking at the main building of the sect. "Aren't you going to intervene and help?" Long Yin asked He Xing in surprise. The young man replied, "Are you suddenly concerned about her safety? I thought you held a grudge against her because she kept you at a distance for a while." The girl smiled and replied that she didn't care about that. When she managed to overcome the barrier, there was no trace of the two. Long even decided that Xiao Fei had gone over to the enemy and fled. The hero clasped his hands together, activating his powerful energy. Of course, he was going to help his student. In the next moment, a golden barrier covered all the rooms of the Eastern Source sect. The entire area seemed to be covered by a protective dome. Is this how you help? Just locking up everyone who is currently in the sect? Isn't that prohibiting Hua Qianhui and the others as well? Long Yin said in surprise. The words about the dragon almost slipped out of the guy's mouth, but he caught himself in time and replied that he would take all the damage upon himself. Plus the boost from the boiling blood effect, I believe in Qianhui. If the situation gets really bad, then I'll intervene myself. We need to make sure that not a single bastard gets away. It's worth taking revenge until they are completely destroyed, said Xiao Fei. While the young man was chatting with Long Yin, Hanako lay on the floor, bleeding. One of the three swordsmen from the Eastern Source, Okava Minte, said with satisfaction, "One strike and it's done. Nothing special." He had not yet had time to rejoice when he saw Hanako begin to get to her feet. The beauty was trembling, but she held on. Okava's mind raced. What the hell? How can she still be alive? He was sure he had severed the girl's carotid artery and she had bled to death. "It seems that instinctive block saved you," exclaimed the scoundrel. He grabbed his sword again, promising himself that this time he wouldn't miss. Okava Minte jumped up from his seat like lightning, his eyes burning red. At that moment, Hanako managed to recover a little and activate her energy control over objects. The next moment, something incredible happened. The earth shook as if something terrible wanted to break out. One of the three swordsmen of the Eastern Source barely managed to stay on his feet. When the man regained his balance, he exclaimed, "And you think you can stop me with such tricks?" Hanako received a message from the system that the boiling blood effect had dealt plus 30% damage. The beauty exclaimed as she attacked her opponent, "I didn't intend to stop you, but you drew your sword before you should have." The girl found herself in an advantageous position, and it seemed that in a moment, Okava's life would come to an end. The next moment, there was a clang of metal and sparks flew in all directions. The swordswoman looked confused, not understanding how the scoundrel had managed to parry her blow. "Even without the advantage of initiative, my skill and speed are enough to parry your blows," said the swordsman from the Eastern Source with a disgusting smile. The beauty realized that the scoundrel had used a blade of destructive power. But the girl did not lose her composure and, while he was talking, struck again. She put all her agility and strength into this attack, aided by her thirst for revenge. New message from the system. Progress on the additional task for the Sword of Destruction. Use the technique 5 times in battle. It requires a greater amount of spiritual energy. After a successful parry, it ignores the enemy's block and strikes the enemy with their own weapon. The enemy lay on the ground in a pool of his own blood. The system reminded the girl that her energy reserves were too low. To reuse the technique, she should wait for her energy to recover. The third of the best swordsmen of the Eastern Source, named Matsuoka Yue, said, "The weakest of us has been destroyed." Nagano Shinkyu replied, "The blade she parried is intact. How could she cut a person with this sword?" He thought to himself, "It's only been a few days. How did her cultivation improve to such a level? Before, he would have killed her several times over in that amount of time." Matsuoka suggested to Nagano, "Let's attack together. It's not about confidence. I just think it's better to share the glory of killing this girl." The second swordsman smiled and replied, "I agree. You start, and I'll cover you." He decided to use a technique called air-splitting strike. Hanako managed to catch her breath and was ready for another attack, easily dodging the blow. While Nagano's attack distracted the beauty, Matsuoka managed to get close to her. It took the swordswoman only a second to parry the enemy's sword. When the swords of the two touched, something like an explosion occurred. The third swordsman of the Eastern Source barely managed to stay on his feet. Meanwhile, Hanako had already broken through the roof with her body for the second time. The girl managed to avoid falling face first into the mud and landed on her feet. Either she began to lose strength, or the sword somehow magically became very heavy. Hanako had not yet managed to regain her energy when she felt the rapidly approaching danger with every cell of her skin. Only a few centimeters saved her from death. Matsuo Yue attacked decisively. A smile played on the man's face. He was pleased with the effect his attack had on the beauty. Hanako realized that now was the time for decisive action, so she threw her sword up and used her restored chi. Stretching out her hand, she summoned her ability to control objects. In the next moment, the swordswoman managed to stop the cold steel with her bare hand. It was a truly impressive sight. The beauty felt incredible pressure from the blade, but she continued to hold on. At that very moment, the girl's waist was struck viciously from behind. Blood spurted from the deep wound on her waist in all directions. Matsuo said to his companion with obvious pleasure, "You're so tough, you cut the girl in half. Hurry up and finish her off. Cut off her head, only then can you be sure she won't come back to life," advised the second swordsman from the Eastern Source. Hanako lay motionless, a crimson pool spreading beneath her. In another moment, the beauty would be finished. When the scoundrel lowered his sword, it suddenly stuck into the ground. Matsuoka Yui was puzzled. He couldn't understand how he had missed. The man couldn't believe his eyes. Standing before him was the swordswoman who, just a second ago, had been lying on the floor, almost dead. Right before everyone's eyes, the terrible wound on the beauty's waist was rapidly healing. Not only that, but not only her body was healing, but her clothes as well. The fatal wound that almost cut her in half healed in an instant. Is such healing art available at the level of truth concentration? Yue thought in amazement. While the scoundrel pondered what he had seen, Hanako wasted no time. The damage from the boiling blood effect reached 80%. A katana appeared in the swordswoman's hand. The third swordsman of the Eastern Source watched the girl's actions closely and took a step back. What the hell is going on here? Why am I retreating without even realizing it? So what if her healing arts are a little stronger than mine? Matsuo thought, trying in vain to suppress his trembling. The next moment, the man rushed into the attack, saying, "You won't be able to withstand my blow anyway. It's enough to cut off your head and your healing will be useless." Hanako swung her sword toward the attacker's attack. After the weapons of the two opponents met, a powerful electromagnetic field appeared around them. Nagano watched the fight in amazement. Even after being cut in half, she continues to fight and can now cross swords with one hand, thought the second swordsman in amazement. The man realized that this girl was getting stronger in battle, and he needed to finish her off as quickly as possible. He decided to attack treacherously again and used his slashing technique. Seeing his comrade's actions, Matsuoka shouted, "What the hell? Are you trying to chop me up too?" The scoundrel Nagano smiled and replied, "The clan will remember your sacrifice." The third swordsman tried to jump back because he had no intention of becoming mincemeat. But this turn of events did not suit Hanako at all. She was not going to let Matsuo go so easily. Now, the girl used her powerful energy and threw the bastard like a doll. Blood splattered in all directions. For a moment, nothing could be seen except blood and stones. When the dust cleared, the second swordsman of the Eastern Source, Nagano Tyuku, saw no one. The man couldn't understand where Hanako had disappeared to. Suddenly, he noticed movement almost behind his back. Without hesitation, Nagano attacked. But the girl was standing too far away, and the power of his sword did not reach her. The next moment, The beauty received a message from the system that her spiritual energy had been restored. Now she could once again use the blade that destroyed power. Pushing off the ground, the swordswoman did a somersault in the air and attacked Nagano from above. You are truly incredibly resilient, but you have not yet reached my level of mastery of the art of the blade, Nagano said maliciously. The man's sword could not withstand the pressure, and the steel crumbled under Hanako's onslaught. The smile had not yet faded from the second swordsman's face when the girl's katana pierced his skull. The beauty's eyes burned with the green fire of vengeance. She had no intention of stopping. As soon as the scumbag was finished off, a message came from the system. Progress of processing the sword of destructive power has reached 2/5. Suddenly, a strange sound in this situation caught Hanako's attention. The girl looked up at the sky. The head of the sect himself was standing on the roof of the house, applauding his daughter, whom he had recently ordered to be killed. You have made rapid progress lately. As your father, I am very pleased, Ryuzaki Seiti said with a smile. A thirst for revenge flooded the beautiful girl's heart with renewed strength. She could no longer control her emotions. Swinging her sword, she rushed at the murderer of her family. The cult leader easily parried her attack without even moving. The beauty expected some kind of dirty trick from the man, but this was too much. The technique of the unbeatable sword was still too difficult for Hanako. Ryuzaki stood like a black monument, and 8 huge daggers hovered in the air around him. The young swordswoman used all her skills to avoid injury. Then, having mastered the technique of the unbeatable sword, I destroyed your family before you could learn it. I think it was a wise decision, said the villain with a disgusting smile. So I will be the only one in this world who possesses this art. You're smiling so much that your face is about to burst, the beauty said angrily. The girl's angry words only amused the villain. You'd better keep that disgusting smile. When I cut off your head along this line, I'm afraid my hand will tremble, Hanako said through clenched teeth. The swordswoman, thirsty for revenge, was no longer going to waste time with idle talk. She moved from words to action. The attack was swift and desperate, but it collided with the scoundrel's protective field. 2 powerful energies collided, and the outcome of this battle was about to be decided. 2 sworn enemies, 2 powerful energies, spun around without stopping, destroying everything in their path. The 8 daggers of the Ryugasaki technique did not stop for a moment. Hanako's entire body was covered with numerous cuts, from which blood oozed. This fully automatic defensive wedge barrier requires a lot of my chi. But even if you give it your all, you won't be able to hurt me. The more fiercely you attack, the more you hurt yourself. Let's see how long you can hold out, the scoundrel gloated. The girl realized that it was time to use a technique called blade that destroys power. The beauty's katana blazed, and in the next moment she was able to overcome the sect leader's defensive barrier of blades. In another moment, her weapon would cut off the head of the scoundrel who had killed her father. But, unfortunately, he was faster and managed to parry the deadly blow. The system sent a message. Progress of Sword of Destruction, processing 3/5. As I thought, your technique can only break through the defense once, said the leader of the Eastern Source sect with malice. He was sure that, having watched her fight all this time, he had figured out all the subtleties. The girl was now an open book to him. Hanako was in no mood for conversation. She tried again and again to break through the scoundrel's defense. Another attempt was unsuccessful. The beauty found herself on the ground in a pool of blood again. Blood trickled down her face and hands in thin streams. Her eyes were closed. Somewhere far away, the face of the dying dreamer was reflected in a bowl of soup. The black cat exclaimed in surprise, "Hey, that new energy vampire who feeds on you will soon perish." The assistant looked up from his bowl and looked at his mistress. "What the hell? Blood is literally gushing out of you," the cat cried out in shock, addressing Lady Dragon. The goddess hissed through her teeth. "I lost a drop of blood and you're already panicking." But she was wrong to be so calm, because blood was rapidly leaving her body, and her face had become terribly thin. "You call that a drop? To be honest, I know you're using that guy, but you're taking so much damage for him and his students. If there's no hidden meaning here, I don't believe it," said the assistant. "Heavenly secrets cannot be revealed even to you," replied Lady Dragon with a smile. Meanwhile, on Earth, the smile quickly disappeared from Ryugosaki's face. "What's that expression on your face?" "I asked you to keep your smirk," Hanako said calmly, standing on her feet again. The scoundrel promised that this time he would definitely beat her up. A message came from the system. The dragon ruler's scale was empty. There was still a little red left in Tianhui's blossom. Boiling blood effect. damage plus 170%. The beauty rushed forward. The thirst for revenge boiling inside her made her want to finish what she had started as soon as possible. The girl moved with incredible speed, and with her restored strength, she managed to overcome the enemy's defensive barrier again. He smiled as he watched her attempts. The man was sure that Hanako would fail again. The scoundrel rushed forward, wanting to finish off the last representative of the ancient clan. What happened next was completely unexpected for the cult leader. He couldn't believe that the girl had managed to break through the barrier a second time. "I promised I would cut you along that disgusting smile," exclaimed the beauty as her sword sliced through the head of her sworn enemy. The technique blade that destroys power, blows, helped Hanako quell her thirst for revenge. The powerful energy of her teacher, which he, in turn, received from the goddess, worked wonders. The sword flew out of Ryugosaki's hands, and his brainless body was no longer in control of itself. At that moment, the system informed the girl that the processing of the blade that destroys power was complete. 5 out of 5. The beauty stood and looked at the work of her hands. At her feet lay the headless body of her sworn enemy. She had avenged her family, killed the founder of the sect, and destroyed all its buildings. Everywhere was deserted, but that did not mean that there were no witnesses to this battle. Wasn't my father's unbreakable blade absolute protection? How could Hanako kill him? Thought Ryuzaki Seiichi, Tencent Animation's son, confused. But in the next moment, the young man stopped thinking about this question and left his hiding place. "It doesn't matter. Now I am the patriarch. Once I escape and seek help from the great clan of the Eastern Source, I will return to finish you off. Whether you are Hanako or Hua Qianhui," Tencent decided. "As you say, as long as there are green mountains, there is no fear of burning firewood," muttered the heir to himself as he fled from the collapsed sect. But when he looked down at his feet, he saw that he had fallen into a deadly trap. The next moment, he was caught in the epicenter of a fiery tornado from which it was unlikely he would escape alive. Hua Qianhui received a message from the system. "The Eastern Source Backpacks clan has been wiped off the face of the earth. Processing for you is complete." The beauty froze in place, watching the sect burn. The sect where she had lived part of her life and which was led by the man who had destroyed her family. "Dad, Mom, little sister, I avenged you!" Blood for blood, justice restored. At that moment, the girl heard Xiao Fei's voice behind her. "Qianhui, you were incredible. System message. 30% of the cultivation and merits obtained for the task have been transferred to Haixing. Qianhui's cultivation level has been raised to level 9 of truth concentration. Haixing's current great stage is full. Now we can wait for the golden core." "Teacher, this magical clothing is no longer automatically restored," said the girl. The hero calmly explained, "It's okay. It's because of your current low spiritual energy reserve. I've given you access to the store. Now you can choose a new set yourself." This news delighted Hanako, and she immediately activated the system field. The young man recommended a dress to the beauty that was similar in style and properties to the previous one. The girl replied that the processing cost 500,000 and she couldn't afford it. Xiao replied, "It's okay. Before you set fire to the Ryuzaki estate, I managed to collect most of their valuables. We can pay for it with their inheritance." The next moment, the young man suddenly exclaimed, "I feel a chill. I sense a murderous spirit." Long Yin suddenly appeared nearby. She was literally burning with rage. "The teacher favors my younger sister in his teaching, but I, who was accepted first, got nothing." The hero forced a smile, but he was already sweating profusely. He asked the girl not to rush, promising that he would immediately come up with something for her as well. Long replied that this was a completely different matter. The young man asked what the beauty wanted to improve, her cultivation level, equipment, or technique. Yun replied that choosing was child's play and that she wanted everything at once. Hei Xin gave the beauty an advance improvement of a large double-winged sword. Now she could see the system panel. The large double-bladed sword has been upgraded. The processing task will be completed within a week. Once completed, you will receive a level upgrade, equipment, and techniques. To begin, press the button to teleport to the corresponding wasteland. Long Yin decided not to delay and immediately pressed the green button. Xiao Fei exclaimed, "Why are you in such a hurry? What about the trial exam?" To which he immediately received the answer that it didn't matter. It wasn't a real entrance exam. "The main thing is that in the end, you can ascend with me. What happens in between doesn't matter to me, the girl added. The next moment, the place where she had been standing a second ago was empty. Hanako thought her older sister was very cool, but the hero paid no attention to this remark. He said, "Leave her alone. I got a message from the school. We need to pick up our passes for the mock exam." When they arrived at the school, a woman from the commission asked why they had only come for the passes now, since all the other students had received them a week ago. The young man replied that they had been busy with additional assignments and asked where the exam would take place. The teacher explained that there was a special seal on the pass. You need to activate your energy to read it, and then you will immediately be teleported to the exam area. It's a very advanced system. You proved yourself on the last mock exam, and now your fame has eclipsed all the other students in the school. Your ranking in the issue has skyrocketed to first place in the entire school, the woman added. Xiaofei laughed cheerfully, saying that he was just lucky. This mock exam is compatible with 10 schools. Strong fighters will gather there, many of whom are ruthless and unprincipled. So be careful, Xiaofei's teacher warned. The next day, the hero met his student again on the top floor of the dormitory. The beauty asked if they would be assigned to the same center. The young man replied that there was no answer to that question, as the assignment was random. He advised the girl to take care of herself and said that they would meet at the finish line. Xiaofei activated his qi and used his teacher's advice to transport himself to the site where the exam would take place. The hero eagerly awaited what would happen next, curious to see where this modern pass would take him. The young man was ready for anything, but he was still surprised by what he saw when he arrived. He found himself in the middle of a forest full of giant trees. The thought flashed through his mind. So this is the exam wasteland, a giant forest? I've seen it before in the program, but now that I'm here, I realize that the trees are much bigger than I could have imagined. Suddenly, Hai Xin heard a loud noise. Looking up at the sky, he saw a quadcopter. The next moment, a voice came from the drone. It announced that the exam was starting right now. The young man felt someone's giant shadow blocking the sun. He cautiously looked back. What he saw stunned him. It was a huge bear with red eyes, a fifth-level spirit beast, Jingning. The possessed animal did not wait and, raising its paw with sharp claws, struck first. Xiaofei understood where he was, so he didn't waste any time and swung his fist in response. The force of his blow was so powerful that it threw the giant bear's carcass into the air. The predator flew into the forest, leaving a crooked trail behind it. The creature was completely knocked out. What kind of strength must the hero have possessed to completely disorient a 500-kilogram bear? It turned out that the defeat was suffered by Yin Nenin, who had the first level of truth concentration, and it was Lai Junshi, who took third place in the 6th school, who knocked him out. It turned out that this handsome guy had a support group. Twin sisters Song Shan and Song Xiang began to shout words of admiration to the young master Lai. The handsome guy smiled and told the audience that the first task was so easy that he only had time to warm up a little. The young man thought to himself, "Hey Shin, I only lost to you in the last exam because I wasn't paying attention. I'm not worse than you, so let's see who wins in the main exam." Suddenly, he heard a threatening growl behind him. It was the next bear, even bigger than the previous one at the 6th level of truth concentration. The creature's eyes were bloodshot and it was looking for its next victim with a fierce gaze. The bear's giant body was covered with deep, old scars. The handsome man exclaimed, "It's clear at first glance. This monster is the same cruel bastard who managed to survive among the competition of the demonic tribe. The pressure from him can only be compared to that mushroom demon that attacked them at school." His support group watched the scene from a safe distance. One of the twins said, "Wow, young Mr. Lai is so cool, standing there without moving in front of such a powerful monster." But in reality, the handsome young man was scared. He took a step back, his legs trembling. "Why won't my legs listen to me? Is the post-traumatic stress from the last exam really that strong?" The young man couldn't understand. Suddenly, the predatory expression on the bear's face changed to one of surprise. It seemed that he had heard some strange sounds coming from the thicket. The next moment, the predator dropped to all fours and ran away into the forest. The beast's behavior completely stunned the young man. He couldn't understand why the monster was running away. But in the next moment, the situation became clear because Xiaofei flashed past Lai like lightning, chasing the bear. It was so powerful that the hero's energy almost knocked the handsome man off his feet, and he even lost his balance. Catching his breath, he looked in the direction where the bear and Hai Xin had disappeared. Meanwhile, the hero had almost caught up with the demonic beast. With a crazy smile, he exclaimed, Where are you going, cute bear? In just a moment, the trunks of the surrounding trees were already splattered with blood. Red drops could also be seen on the cracked ground and among the rocks. Lai Junshi stood rooted to the spot, watching in horror as a crimson stream flowed out of the thicket. The young man's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He had not expected such a turn of events. The clearing in the middle of the huge forest was covered with bear corpses. The last one fell right next to the frightened young man. At that moment, a red puddle began to spread beneath it. Lai said in a stunned tone, "All these dozens of elite monsters of level 5 to 6 truth concentration? How did he destroy them so easily? And I naively thought that I could compete with him." A system board appeared in the sky with the results of the first subject exam. The second subject will begin soon, and students should prepare themselves. Now, out of 172 remain. Zhang Zhishi, a representative of School 1, took the lead in the current ranking with a total score of 200 points. He was followed by our hero He Xin from School 6, also with 200 points. Someone named Wang Ping from School 8 managed to earn 198 points. Hua Qianhua, whom we know, took fourth place with 186 points. She also represented School 6. Mo Dun from School 7 came in fifth with 180 points. Wang Ping, a handsome young man with beautiful muscles, exclaimed, "What the hell? Someone managed to turn a handout into a deadly trap. Only those who are in the top 10 of their educational institution can take part in this trial exam. And you want to disgrace the title of the best students of your school." Then he looked at Hanako and asked if she agreed with him. The girl remained silent. The beauty had no intention of engaging in discussion. Pushing off the ground with ease, she jumped onto a thick tree branch. But Wang Ping was a persistent young man, and he used a technique called ground compression in a step. "When I watched you in the first subject, I saw your potential. Would you like to join our clan after passing the exam? Someone as talented as you, I will immediately take as my student," the young man said, keeping up with the dreamer. Hua looked back at him and thought, "This idiot first took my monsters, and now he's following me around and constantly chatting, distracting me. He's annoying me to death." An information board appeared ahead. The exam for Subject 2 begins. Several armor-piercing claws are hidden in the area. Collect 10 of them to create an armor-piercing spear, which will significantly increase your chances of defeating the main guardian monster. One of the exam participants decided that they were being deliberately intimidated. He looked at the mountain and said that the main monster must be on it. The young man used his clan's secret technique called conquering the wind, step with the wind. It was Mo Dun, a representative of the 7th school. The young man said, as if talking to himself, "I am the incomparable genius of the Mo family, levitating in the heavens without even reaching the golden core. Why do I need some spear to pierce armor now?" The guy decided to surpass everyone and immediately take the head of the main monster and thus pass the exam. With the help of his Mo family's ancient technique, he easily reached the top of the highest mountain. The first person he met there was a werebear dressed as a monk, who had a truth concentration level of 10. Young Mo was a little disappointed because he had expected a much stronger main monster, but this one was of the same level as him. The young man did not hesitate and immediately attacked the monster. The technique used by the representative of the 7th school to attack the higher-order monster was called pacifying the wind, tornado cutting through stones. While this technique was in effect, it was impossible to see anything around. The stones on the ground and the rocks around them were terribly destroyed. The hurricane, in which small stones swirled, destroyed everything in its path. If someone below was looking up at the top of the highest mountain, they might have thought that some kind of madness was happening there. Wang Ping, who had seen Mo climb the mountain, exclaimed, "Did he really win by luck?" Meanwhile, the representative of School 7 was already preparing to tally the scores for the second subject exam. But suddenly, Mo felt a very strong, threatening aura somewhere very close to him. Without waiting for the owner of the hostile energy to appear, the young man decided to run away. He had already flown down the mountain when suddenly a bear dressed as a monk appeared in the air. He had scars from Mo's hurricane, but it did not cause significant damage, only angering the monster. The boy was afraid to look back, but decided to face the danger head-on. The young man stretched his arms forward in flight, trying to create a protective barrier. This technique was called wind wall and was supposed to save Mo from the bear's attack. The representative of the 7th school managed to react in time. His protective barrier took the enemy's blow. It took the blow, but unfortunately, it couldn't stop it. Mo gasped for breath. Wang Ping, who continued to watch the events from a tree branch, couldn't see anything for a while. When the fog cleared, the student saw that the unfortunate Mo was flying upside down. Unable to grab onto a tree branch, the young man fell to the ground. When the dust raised by the impact had settled, Ping saw Mo lying motionless on the ground, showing no signs of life. The next moment, a giant bear landed nearby, clearly not intending to stop there. What an idiot. That's what happens when you solve a problem head-on without reading the conditions. Plus, you let the main monster down, Wang said irritably. He watched the bear for a while as it stood motionless. The guy was glad that the monster wasn't going to attack first. The claws pierce the armor on this main monster, but to kill it, you first need to get those very claws. What kind of twisted logic is this task? The young man asked himself. He had seen armor-piercing claws before on other elite werebears. There weren't many of them, but it was worth collecting them now. The next thing Wang saw was the paw of a giant bear and the gaze of its predatory red eyes. The young man was determined to collect all the claws he needed to create an armor-piercing spear. The monster was already close to the tree where the young man was sitting. One blow from its powerful paw and splinters flew from the trunk. Suddenly, the creature froze as a powerful jet of water hit it right in the chest, piercing it through. In the next moment, the bear was finished, bleeding to death as it fell to the ground. Wang Ping used his clan's technique. It was called the water beam. Not every elite werewolf bear has a claw that can pierce armor. It's a rare thing. Let's see if we get lucky with this one, said the young man, examining his victim's paws. A moment later, the boy was holding an armor-piercing claw in his hand. It wasn't easy. He had to kill 10 to get one. Suddenly, the young man felt someone rushing towards him. He looked up and saw the silhouette of Hua Qianhui. 3 armor-piercing claws were already sticking out of the girl's belt. Wang Ping was so surprised that this beauty had already obtained so many artifacts that his mouth fell open. The young man was angry that he was so far behind the girl. He immediately activated his water energy using the water ball barrage technique and rushed forward in search of other claws. Meanwhile, Hai Xin stood on top of a cliff and surveyed his surroundings. Suddenly, the boy felt light footsteps behind him and quickly looked back. Teacher, this student has already collected 6 armor-piercing claws. If the teacher doesn't have enough, he can take some from me, said Hanako, who had just appeared on the rock. The hero replied that he appreciated her help, but that it wasn't necessary. A second later, he demonstrated to the girl the abilities he had gained through the system. He was able to take armor-piercing spears as an advance payment at the system store. The stunned student froze in place. She was amazed by her teacher's limitless abilities. Having obtained the main artifact of this exam, Xiaofei would now easily take first place. Another bear was killed by 3 of Pin's water beams. The young man crouched down next to the dead beast to see if it had the one he was looking for among its claws. The guy was pleased with the result, although he found the 9th. Only 1 more was needed to achieve the goal. Meanwhile, a system window appeared in the sky with the current progress of the claw collection. Wang Ping was in first place with 9 out of 10. Zhang Jishi was in second place with 7 out of 10. Hua Qianhui was in third place with 6 out of 10. Meanwhile, He Xin was only at 67 with 0. Wang exclaimed, "Huh, that same He Xin who, according to rumors, completed the task on his own without following the program. What a complete failure. He doesn't live up to his reputation at all. This time, I'll take the lead in the second subject." But suddenly, the young man saw a red warning from the system saying that Hai Xin had created a spear to pierce armor. Wang Ping was literally stunned by the news, simply frozen with his mouth open. At that moment, Hua Qianhui thought in amazement, how could anyone have predicted this? The teacher is something else. That wind skill used by the guy from the Mo family is quite useful. I checked it out. It's a common achievement. There will be no patent disputes. It can be predicted. Xiaofei came up with a brilliant plan. Advance. Spell. Taming the Wind. Hua Qianhui is assigned Taming the Wind. Points for the second item are awarded based on the damage you inflict on each main monster. I'll knock down the monster's health level first and you come up and finish it off. That way, we'll both get the highest points. The hero explained his idea. The student agreed. The young man didn't hesitate any longer and simply jumped off the cliff. The height was considerable, but Xiaofei was confident in his abilities. Down below, a giant monster of the highest level was waiting for its new prey. The bear growled, its furious roar echoing throughout the forest. Hai Xin was rapidly approaching, holding an armor-piercing spear in his hand. The young man's eyes burned red. Now he wanted to finish this exam as quickly as possible. The shorter the distance to the bear became, the more tense the hero became. The young man managed to do a somersault in the air, preparing to strike a single, deadly, precise blow. The bear's gaze changed. A moment ago it had been fierce, but now it was more frightened. The spear strike was so powerful that it threw the monster aside. He-shin did not stop there. He raised his weapon again for the next blow. Striking the ground with his spear, the hero raised a pillar of earth and stones, thus isolating his enemy. It was a cunning move so that the bear would not expect where the blow would come from. Xiaofei's plan worked, and the monster didn't even notice how the deadly weapon reached its chest. But the story couldn't end so simply. The technique used by the bear is called Thunder Art of Dark Mist. The monster managed to intercept the spear just as it was about to pierce its body. Everything around began to sparkle as if struck by lightning. The bear tried to hold back the enemy's attack, but the blade of the spear was rapidly approaching his chest. Now it was time to use the Mo family's technique to finally finish off this monster. Thanks to this incredible acceleration, Hai Xinyu managed to overcome the bear's resistance and finally pierced it through. There was a witness to this battle. Wang Ping continued to sit on a tree branch and watch intently. The young man looked furious because this upstart was taking his monster away. Mo, who had been lying on the ground, suddenly began to move. The guy was finally able to sit up, his eyes wide with shock. Was I knocked out? It took a few more minutes before the young man could finally see anything. He turned his head toward the noise and saw clouds of dust raised during the battle. He-shin continued his duel with the strongest monster of this trial, a powerful red aura swirling around him. The hero wielded his armor-piercing spear with incredible dexterity. He hit his target again and again, and the bear was already completely covered in bloody scars. With each subsequent blow, the monster's chances of victory diminished. Another blow, and the thick trunk of a nearby tree was split in half. Suddenly, Hai Xing's confident expression changed to one of surprise. It turned out that the young man had not missed. He had accidentally hit the tree trunk with his spear. The monster has greatly reduced its size. It realized that it could neither defend itself nor dodge. In this way, it increased its mobility, Wang Ping stated with a smile. We'll see how you handle this, Hai Xin, and if you can't, I'll jump in and reap the rewards, the young man gloated. Meanwhile, the hero quickly regained his bearings and literally showered the monster with a barrage of blows. Everything around him was covered in blood, but the beast did not give up. He was able to block the last blow with his golden bracelet. Now it switched from defense to offense and swung its powerful fist to strike. He-shin barely managed to stop the beast, shielding himself with the shaft of his spear. The thought flashed through the young man's mind. Even though it has shrunk, its attack is still powerful. The hero tried to analyze the bear's actions. It concentrated its chi in the armor on its arms. Before, when it was big, it didn't use it. Probably, it hadn't fully mastered the technique yet and couldn't cover such a huge body. Double protection, physical and magical. No wonder the mission description says significantly increases the chances and not guarantees success. The young man continued to ponder. At that moment, the bear leaped into the air to strengthen its attack. Xiaofei was expecting something like this. Holding the spear in his right hand, he spun it with all his might with his left. Then, gripping the shaft of the weapon tightly with both hands, he delivered a spinning strike. The blade of the armor-piercing spear approached the body of the monster in the Buddhist monk's costume for the second time. The closer the spear got to the bear, the brighter the golden aura glowed. Taking advantage of another advance from the system, Xiaofei exclaimed, "Strike the throat!" His eyes now resembled thin slits. Flying into the air, empowered by his new technique, the hero flew straight at the bear. He hoped that this time everything would finally be over. The armor-piercing spear went right through.